Hello everyone. Tonight we're stepping straight into the iron grip of a medieval English winter. The kind that bites the instant your lungs draw breath. You're standing on the frozen fringe of a small village somewhere in the Midlands, maybe around the year 1350. The temperature has already plunged well below what we'd call 0 Fahrenheit, and the air itself feels like a blade against any patch of uncovered skin. Every roof is armored in thick white frost. Long icicles hang from the eaves like crystalline daggers, catching the last weak glimmers of twilight. Under your feet, the snow has hardened into a crust that cracks with every cautious step. The sun vanished hours ago, taking almost all color and hope with it. For a second, you let yourself imagine trying to sleep through a night that can easily fall to -25 or lower. Without serious preparation, you wouldn't wake up. People here have been perfecting that preparation for centuries.
If this is the sort of deep dive you love, consider giving the video a thumbs up and hitting subscribe, but only if it's actually your kind of thing. And if you feel like it, drop a quick comment telling me where in the world you're watching from and what the clock says on your end right now. Lower the lights a little, settle in, and let the cold start climbing your legs as we move deeper into the village. Everything here happens slowly, deliberately. Sound carries unnaturally far in this dry, knife-sharp air. The faint scrape of a shovel against packed snow, the muffled cough of a child inside one of the cottages, the distant lowing of livestock huddled in a barn. Most of all, you notice the smell. Thin, sweet wood smoke threading its way between the crooked little houses. By the late 14th century, large parts of England had already been stripped of mature woodland. Royal forests were protected for the king's hunting, and what was left for common people was often young coppice or scrub that burned fast and gave little heat. Fuel was not just precious, it was a constant anxiety that colored every single winter evening. You stop in front of a low, single-story peasant house. A faint orange glow leaks around the edges of its wooden shutter. The wind rattles it hard enough to make the whole frame shudder. You ease the door open just enough to slide inside, and the relative warmth hits you like a soft slap. It's still bitterly cold by our standards, maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit at best, but after the outside, it feels almost luxurious. A small central hearth smolders more than it flames. The fire has been nursed all day to stretch the logs as far as they'll go. A heavy iron pot hangs over it, and the steam curling up carries the dense, comforting smell of barley, leeks, dried peas, and whatever herbs they could still find. Probably a thick pottage that will be tomorrow's breakfast and lunch, too. Everyone moves with exaggerated care, because every time the door opens, the temperature inside plummets. Cold air pours across the floor like water. Close to the fire, on a patch of cleaner rushes, lies a small bundled object, a rough linen pouch tied with twine. Inside are things that seem bizarre to us: a couple of dried toads, a hagstone with a natural hole, a few hawk feathers, maybe a scrap of parchment with a charm scribbled in Latin no one here can read. These little winter talismans were common. People believed they warded off the frost spirits, or at least gave the household something to hope in when the night felt endless. The family starts the careful ritual of going to bed. First, the fire must be banked. The householder drags a wooden rake, or sometimes just a flat stick wrapped in rag through the ashes, pulling a blanket of gray over the glowing embers beneath. Done right, those coals will stay alive until dawn, ready to be teased back into flame with a breath of bellows and a handful of kindling. Done wrong, and the whole household wakes to a stone-cold hearth and the terrifying job of borrowing fire from a neighbor who might not have any to spare.
Surviving records are frustratingly quiet about exact tools. Some archaeologists think many families simply used their hands, protected by thick rags. But the stakes were always the same. Keep the heart of the house beating through the darkest hours. You glance at the walls while they work. They're wattle and daub, supple hazel rods woven between the oak uprights, then packed with a wet mix of clay, straw, chopped reeds, even animal hair or dung for binding. Once it dries, it sets hard, but it's never perfect. Wind finds every crack. Over the years, the household has stuffed moss, old rags, and handfuls of sheep's wool into the worst gaps, but you can still feel the drafts sneaking through, stroking the back of your neck like ghostly fingers. In a modern house, we measure insulation in R values. Here, the only metric is whether your fingertips go numb before morning. Every patch, every daubed handful of mud, every desperate scrap of cloth rammed into a hole is a quiet act of defiance against a season that has killed stronger people than these for less. And the night is only just beginning. Your lungs pull in a slow, deliberate breath, and the air inside the cottage tastes of old smoke, damp wool, and the faint sour sweetness of rushes that haven't been changed since Michaelmas. It's not pleasant, but it is intimate. 8 or 9 people, 2 dogs, maybe a cat curled on the crossbeam. Everyone's warmth and stink and quiet breathing mingle into a single living cloud that hovers just below the soot-blackened rafters. The cold outside is a predator. In here, the shared heat of bodies is the only wall that still holds. A teenage boy glances toward the shadows where you stand. His eyes linger a second longer than politeness allows. In January, strangers are rare. Nothing travels except ravens and rumors. The paths are empty. The well is half a mile away and glazed with ice, and every soul who can stay indoors does. Winter shrinks the world to the size of one small room. You sink back against the wall, letting the weight of your own clothing settle. The tunic is thick cotton gray wool, the hose beneath it another layer of the same, and over everything a heavy cloak still stiff from the frost it carried in. The weave is coarse enough to rasp your neck when you turn your head, but it traps air like a living thing. People wore layer upon layer. Linen shift against the skin, wool tunic, wool gown. Sometimes a sheepskin jerkin turned fleece inward if the family was lucky. Heat came from what you kept next to your body, not from the room itself. Close your eyes and listen. Cold does something strange to sound. It strips away softness. A joint in the roof beam cracks like a musket shot as frost forces the green oak apart. Somewhere a shutter whistles on its leather hinge. A child whimpers once, then is hushed against its mother's breast. The tiny pop of a settling ember sounds almost like speech. These are the lullabies of a medieval winter night, sharp, honest, and impossible to ignore. You draw one last lungful of the thick, eye-watering air and step back through the door. The night hits you like a mailed fist. The temperature has dropped another few degrees while you were inside. Your teeth ache instantly, and the moisture on your eyelashes turns to tiny needles of ice. Snow squeaks underfoot as you follow the narrow, trodden path between the houses. Overhead, the sky is a black bowl, hammered full of stars so bright they seem close enough to cut. Every cottage you pass leaks a thread of dull orange around its shutters. Those shutters are thin deal boards, sometimes no more than a finger's thickness, and the wind finds every seam. Yet people still manage to sleep. Part of the trick was surrendering to darkness itself. Close the shutter, hang an old blanket or a spare cloak across it, pull the wool up over your ears, and let the night become a heavy quilt that presses the warmth down around you. You ease open the latch of the next house and slip inside. This room is poorer, The hearth is little more than a ring of stones in the middle of the floor, and the fire has already collapsed into a nest of dull red embers no bigger than a man's fist. A woman in her 30s kneels beside it, moving with the unhurried grace of someone who has done this every night of her adult life. She drags a broken wooden spade through the ashes, heaping a pale gray mound over the coals. One careless scoop too much, and the heart of the fire did smother. Too little, and the heat will bleed away before dawn. Everything depends on the next few minutes. No matches, no lighter, no second chances. Before the 13th century, most villages relied entirely on carrying fire from house to house in covered pots or on slow-burning tinder. Even after flint and steel became more common, striking a new light in the black pre-dawn cold was a gamble that could waste an hour and still fail. Keeping the embers alive was not tradition, it was necessity.
Behind her, the rest of the family wait in silence. Someone murmurs, so low you almost miss it. 3 logs for the morning, no more. The words land like stones in still water. 3 logs. That has to warm water, boil pottage, and bake the daily bread before the next night comes. Scarcity is not an abstract concept here. It is measured in arm lengths of split oak and counted every evening like rosary beads. The woman finishes her careful burial of the fire. She sets the spade aside, wipes her hands on her apron, and only then allows herself a small, tired exhale that fogs briefly in front of her face. In this house, as in every other, the long vigil against the dark has officially begun. In some corners of England, they burned peat cut from the mossy moors. In others, squares of dried turf stacked like bricks beside the door. When even that ran short, they gathered cowpats or horse dung, shaped them by hand, and left them on the wall to dry until they were hard as shale.
The smell when they caught it was rank and clinging, but no one complained. Heat was heat, and heat was the thin margin between waking and not waking. There's an odd scrap of lore that surfaces in a few manor court rolls. Certain households swore that dung from cattle grazed on wild thyme or fennel burned hotter and cleaner. A farmer might watch his herd all summer the way a winemaker watches grapes, hoping the beasts cropped the right herbs so January would be a fraction less brutal. Inside this cottage, the last real flame has already surrendered. Only a small heap of embers pulses like a dying heart. Shadows lunge and retreat across the walls each time the glow flares. The cold has not given up. It slides along the floor in slow, patient currents, licking at your boots, curling around your calves the way smoke curls upward. You crouch near the stones and rub your hands briskly. Even here, no more than 4 feet from the coals, the air is barely above freezing. On the worst nights, with a north wind screaming across the fens, the temperature inside could fall to within a degree or 2 of the outside air. Archaeological digs and abandoned hamlets have found frost patterns on the inside faces of shattered pottery. The mercury, if they had had any, would have frozen solid. A young girl lifts an iron kettle the size of a helmet and sets it on the edge of the ashes. Just enough warmth seeps through the metal to take the bite out of a handful of water for tomorrow's face washing. Full baths were a midsummer memory. In January, a rag dipped in lukewarm water was celebration enough. The family begins arranging the bed, if the word even fits. A low platform of boards, a thick pad of straw, 2 threadbare wool blankets, and every spare cloak in the house. They know the precise spot on the floor where the heat pools best, 2 body lengths from the hearth and directly beneath the smoke hole where the rising warmth lingers longest. Children are steered there first, rolled like kittens into the middle. Adults ring them in a deliberate circle, knees drawn up, backs curved outward, forming a living wall that traps the day's last gift of warmth. One by one the tallow lamps are pinched out. Wax and wick were too dear to waste on sleep. Darkness collapses over everything,
thick as felt. Now the only light is the dull ruby heartbeat under its blanket of ash. A single log shifts, the embers brighten for a breath, then sink again. Someone clears a throat. A baby snuffles, finds a thumb, and quiets. The small sounds feel enormous in the stillness. Up in the rafters, a hen clucks once and rearranges her feathers. Many families brought a few chickens inside on the bitterest nights, sometimes even a pregnant ewe or a newborn calf if the buyer was too exposed. Every beating heart added a degree or two. Every exhaled breath was another coin in the bank against dawn. The roof beams speak in low groans as frost squeezes the oak a little tighter. The sound is slow, inevitable, almost mournful.
You rest your back against the wall and feel the boards shiver each time the wind shoulders the house. You draw a careful breath. The air tastes of soot, damp straw, warm animals, and the faint iron tang of extreme cold. It is not comfortable, but it is alive, and that is the point. These people did not just endure winter, they negotiated with it every single night. Would the coals hold? Would the youngest child's feet stay warm enough to keep circulation? Would the shutters hold against a gust that could rip them clean off their leather hinges? Sleep was never passive. It was strategy, choreography, communal engineering. You let your eyelids drop and simply listen. The soft wheeze of the old man in the corner, the faint rustle of straw as someone turns, the slow, steady breathing of 8 people and 3 chickens, all trying to outlast the same enemy. The fire sinks lower. The cold waits, patient as stone, just beyond the circle of bodies. And somewhere in that delicate balance, the long medieval night goes on.
You stay crouched by the hearth until the last coal dulls to the color of dried blood, then to a whisper of rose-gray ash. Only then do you stand, joints creaking like old timber, and push the door open once more. The night outside is a different creature altogether, still, sharp, and merciless. The cold snaps at your face so fiercely that the skin across your cheekbones stings as if it's been slapped. You pause on the threshold and let the shock of it roll over you, just long enough to remember what the cottagers are up against. A single human body radiates about as much heat as a large candle. Alone, that candle gutters fast. Together, many candles can light a room. You follow the packed snow path toward a low, steady murmur of voices and the occasional ripple of laughter. Rare, precious sounds in January. A broader, better thatched house looms ahead, its door ajar just enough for a blade of gold to escape. You ease inside. The difference is immediate and startling. The air here is almost mild, perhaps 50 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe more.
The hearth helps, but the real furnace is the people. 3 families, maybe 20 souls in all, packed companionably into one long chamber. Shoulders touch shoulders, knees brush knees. Every slow exhale adds another thimbleful of warmth to the common pool. This was no rare emergency measure. Across much of northern Europe, from the Alps to the North Sea coast, winter bundling was routine in smaller villages. Manorial records, coroners' rolls, even saints' lives casually mention households doubling or tripling up when the frost set in hard. A single larger fire, one thick roof, and the combined body heat of neighbors could raise the temperature 5, 8, even 10 degrees above what a lone family could manage. It was simple thermodynamics wrapped in everyday hospitality. You watched them build the night's nest. Armfuls of straw dragged from the corner, 2 thin mattresses of patched wool, every cloak and blanket the family's own heaped into a single wide island. Children are steered to the center like the yolk of an egg. Adults form the protective white around them.
Heat rises and is held there, reflected back down by the low thatch, captured again by the layers of wool and living skin. The smell is dense: wood smoke, boiled cabbage, wet dog, lanolin-rich wool, the unmistakable tang of bodies that bathed last in September. Yet somehow it feels comforting rather than rank. It is the smell of survival, of life refusing to surrender. An older man with a beard like frost-crusted moss notices you hovering and lifts one corner of a heavy blanket in invitation. You step over outstretched legs and sink into the edge of the nest. Someone presses a folded cloak into your arms. It is still warm from the person who wore it all day. You pull it around your shoulders and feel the instant bloom of trapped heat against your chest. A woman on your left, her hair braided tight against the night's chill, leans close enough that you catch the faint scent of wood ash in her clothes.
"In the blackest cold," she murmurs, "we sleep skin to skin if we must. No shame in it. The frost whites can't find purchase when folk keep one another warm." She smiles, teeth white in the dimness. "My granny swore that if you can wedge yourself between two hearty sleepers, one on each side, you'll never take the cough, and the night hag won't ride your chest. We call it lending fire round here. Borrowing heat, lending fire, call it what you like. Warmth was a communal resource, passed hand to hand like bread." You lower yourself onto the rustling straw. It prickles through every layer of cloth, but the trapped air beneath the top blanket is already body warm. Someone shifts to make room. A small calloused foot accidentally nudges your calf and stays there, sharing its pulse of heat without apology. At the far end of the room, the hearth settles into a low, contented breathing of its own. Shadows sway across the rafters like slow waves. A girl of 7 or 8, nestled deeper in the pile, whispers drowsily to no one in particular. "And the bear was made of snow, but when I hugged him, he turned into feathers and flew away." Her voice trails off into the soft chorus of breathing that now fills the space. 20 separate rhythms slowly braiding themselves into one. You close your eyes and feel the temperature climb another degree, simply because no one here is facing the night alone. Outside, the wind howls its frustration against the thatch. Inside, the small human furnace burns steady and bright. The child's mother smooths a stray lock of hair from the girl's forehead, murmuring something too low to catch. The gesture is automatic, tender, ancient. Outside, the wind keeps prowling, rattling the shutters like it's trying every latch in the village. In here, though, the cold is held at bay by nothing more complicated than 20 human bodies and one large, shaggy dog. You ease your shoulder a fraction closer to the man on your left. He simply shifts to make room, the same way you'd move a cup so someone else can set down a jug. Nobody asks permission. Nobody needs to. Personal space is a luxury no one can afford when the night is 20 below. Your next breath comes slower, deeper. You feel the gentle tide of everyone else's breathing. Inhale, pause, exhale, until the whole room seems to rock on the same quiet rhythm. It's almost hypnotic, a living, low-frequency hum that you can sense in your ribs. A rough calculation drifts across your mind. An adult at rest gives off roughly 80 to 100 watts of heat, the same as a bright incandescent bulb. 20 adults, half a dozen children, one dog the size of a small pony, that's easily 2 kilowatts pooled in one low room.
No wonder the air feels almost balmy compared to the solitary cottages you left behind. This isn't just neighborliness, it's thermodynamics wearing a human face. Scholars still bicker over how widespread the practice was. The manor rolls and church court records that survive almost always describe lords and wealthy merchants with their private chambers and curtained beds. The peasantry left fewer traces, mostly a passing mention in a coroner's report when someone smothered in the crush, or a gleeful moralist complaining that villagers lay mingled like beasts. So we piece the picture together from archaeology, from seasonal spikes in certain kinds of injuries, from the sheer common sense of staying alive. The evidence is patchy, but the logic is ironclad. The big dog lets out a contented sigh and wriggles deeper between two sleeping boys, its flank rising and falling like a bellows. You rest your hand on the straw beside you and feel the warmth radiating up through the mattress. Fresh straw, fluffed every morning with a pitchfork, is surprisingly effective insulation. The hollow stems hold millions of tiny air pockets. People who never heard the word R-value still understood that still air is the enemy of cold. Across the nest, someone hooks a spare ox hide over a rope stretched between two beams, letting it drop like a curtain around the edge of the group. Another layer, another degree reclaimed from the night. Modern expedition tents use the same principle. A fly sheet to break the wind, a footprint to trap ground warmth, a tight inner skin to hold the sleeper's own heat. The technology here is older than England itself.
The talk has mostly died away. A low story about a fox who stole the moon trails off into yawns. Eyelids sag. You let your own eyes close and simply feel the temperature climb, degree by slow degree, until the air under the blankets is almost thick with warmth. Privacy, as we know it, barely existed. You fall asleep with a stranger's hair tickling your ear and another stranger's foot wedged against your shin. Secrets, jokes, nightmares, first kisses. Half the village probably learned the facts of life on nights exactly like this, whispered across a shared pillow while the adults pretended not to hear. The fire gives one last pop, sending a brief bloom of orange across the underside of the thatch. You open your eyes just long enough to see frost sparkling along the rafters like someone scattered crushed glass. The ceiling is so low you could touch it if you sat upright. The room has shrunk to the exact size of the people keeping each other alive.
Somewhere in that small, breathing darkness, you finally let yourself sink. The wind howls on, furious and unheard. Inside the cocoon, the temperature holds steady, and the long medieval winter is, for a few hours at least, defeated by nothing more complicated than closeness. You linger for one last heartbeat inside the breathing cocoon of the communal room, surrounded by the slow tide of shared warmth, then carefully lift the blanket and slide free. Nobody stirs beyond a sleepy sigh or the soft rustle of straw. The big dog twitches an ear, dreams already chasing it across warmer fields. The moment the door closes behind you, winter clamps down again, fierce, possessive, almost personal. Your lungs seize for a second at the shock of it. Frost forms instantly on the wool where your breath touches. You pull the cloak tight and set off, boots punching crisp holes in the moonlit snow. The next cottage sits a little apart, older than the rest, its ridge sagging like an old horse's back. One corner of the thatch has slipped, and the timbers lean together as if they're holding each other upright. Yet before you even reach the latch, you catch the scent. Sun-dried straw, the ghost of last summer's meadows drifting out to greet you. Inside, a single household is finishing the quiet ceremony of making their bed. There is almost no fire left, just a faint red eye beneath gray ash, yet the room already feels different.
A broad, low box bed built against the far wall is being filled the way a baker fills a pie. Arm after arm of fresh, golden straw carried in from the lean-to, tossed, shaken, spread. The father and the older boys work in silence, the way men move when the task is older than speech. Each forkful lands with a soft hiss and settles with a sigh. You kneel at the edge and run your fingers through it. The stalks are hollow, light, still faintly warm from the day's faint sun. Press them and they spring back. Crush them and they trap 1,000 tiny cushions of air. The same dead air principle that keeps climbers alive on Everest kept these people alive in January.
They never called it loft or dead air insulation. They simply noticed that new straw slept warmer than old and changed it every few weeks the way we change a filter. A girl of 9 or 10 smooths a worn linen sheet over the mound, tugging the corners with fierce concentration. Over that goes a heavy wool blanket the color of storm clouds. Then another, thinner one, that once might have been dyed a festive red. The layers transform the prickly base into something almost plush. The grandfather, face creased like old bark, catches your eye and pats the mattress twice, an invitation as old as hospitality itself. You ease yourself down. The straw protests with a crisp, papery crackle, then yields. It is nothing like memory foam. It is better than memory foam in its honest way. The bed shapes itself around your shoulder blades, your hips, the small of your back, forming a shallow nest that cups you the way a hand cups a flame. Warmth rises almost at once from the compressed stalks beneath. You understand immediately why box beds were built with sides and sometimes even a sliding wooden door. Once you're inside, your own heat has nowhere to escape.
The old man leans close enough that you smell wood smoke in his beard. Some folk, he says in a voice like dry leaves, slip lavender or sweet woodruff between the bunches. Fleas hate it, dreams love it, and the bed smells of June when the world outside is iron. He taps the mattress again, satisfied, as though the straw itself has just proved his point. You sit up slowly, reluctantly. The straw sighs again, already missing your weight. The fire gives one last flutter, painting the low beams the color of dark honey, then sinks into quiet ember glow. Outside, the wind is rising, testing every seam in the walls. Inside, the bed is ready, a small, bright island of summer, saved against the longest night of the year. You draw a slow breath of warm, straw-scented air, and for a moment you almost lie back down. But the village still has secrets left to show you, and the night is far from finished. You linger a little longer, letting the small, deliberate ritual finish its work.
Bedding here is never just something you lie on. It is something you build, night after night, the way a mason builds a wall or a baker tends a fire. It is the one place where laboring people can still exert control after the daylight is gone. After a short winter day spent breaking ice at the well, splitting frozen logs, or trudging home, bent under a yoke of firewood, this low wooden box, filled with last summer's harvest, becomes the evening's only reward. You brush your palm across the linen sheet again. It is coarse, patched in 2 places, and has been washed so often in wood ash lye that it feels almost papery, yet it is priceless. Linen wicked sweat in summer and kept straw dust off the skin in winter. Every household, even the poorest, kept at least one good sheet, because damp straw against bare legs invited chills, and chills invited the cough that never left before spring. The mother gives the top blanket, a heavy, much mended patchwork of browns and faded russets, one final shake. It settles over the family like a slow avalanche of wool.
trapping the day's last heat the way a lid traps steam.
The weight is deliberate. Heavy blankets press warmth back into the body and keep cold air from slipping between layers. Modern weighted blankets are sold as therapy. Here, they were simply survival. Your gaze drifts to the practical edges of the room. A fresh bundle of floor rushes tied with twine, waiting for tomorrow's scattering. 2 clay bottles stoppered with rag, still holding the faint warmth of the fire for anyone who wakes parched. A chipped bowl of shriveled crab apples and sloes, the last sweet thing before Easter. Nothing is accidental. Everything earns its place. The family arranges itself with the ease of long practice. Father takes the coldest side nearest the wall. Mother slides in beside him. The children burrow into the warm pocket between them like fox cubs. Limbs overlap without apology. The box bed creaks once, a low, companionable groan, then accepts their combined weight and grows quiet. The mother smooths the blanket over a small shoulder and murmurs, "Lie still, little hearts. Let the straw drink your warmth and give it back when the night is darkest." The same sentence, or something very like it, has been spoken in this room every January for longer than anyone can remember. You picture the hours ahead. Breath by breath, the straw beneath them will climb from cool to body warm to almost hot along the spine and the backs of knees. Moisture will rise and be wicked away by wool. The heavy blanket will keep it all penned in. By the dead of night, this crude nest will be 30, 40 degrees warmer than the air a foot above the mattress. It is not a furnace. It is a slow oven built for people. A coal shifts in the hearth and throws one brief flare across the rafters. You catch the glint of fresh frost already blooming along the inside of the shutter like white fern. Outside, the wind prowls and sniffs, searching for a way in. It will not find one tonight. The old man catches your eye again. "Straw remembers," he whispers, amused. "It flattens, it powders, it has to be born again every Candlemas. You'll find bits of it in your hose come spring, little golden spears stuck to the wool, proof the bed loved you." He chuckles, the sound dry as the stalks themselves. "We used to say the house with the most mice had the warmest straw. My mother would stand at the door and call out, 'Come, little sisters, come test our hospitality.' If they came running, we knew we'd done the bed proud." Then the laughter fades into a yawn, and he too sinks back into the nest. The fire sinks with him. One by one, the small sounds stop. The last crackle, the last sigh, the last rustle of a child turning over. Breathing deepens, steadies, braids itself into a single slow tide. You stand in the near dark, surrounded by the hush of people who have done everything they can do. The room is no longer a room. It is a seed, buried in wool and straw and human heat, waiting for morning. And for the first time all night, the cold feels very far away. You stand one last moment in the hush of the straw-scented room, feeling the pull of that warm nest even from across the floor. Then you brush the clinging golden flecks from your cloak, offer the sleeping family the smallest of bows, and step out. The door has barely latched before winter seizes you again. The air is so cold it feels solid, like walking into glass. Each breath stings, then blooms white and vanishes upward into a sky rinsed clean of everything but starlight. You tuck your chin, pull the cloak tight, and follow your own footprints for a few paces before veering toward a faint, honey-colored glow leaking between warped shutters farther down the lane. When the door opens, the first thing that reaches you is not heat, but texture. Thick, springy, almost furry. Wool is everywhere. It hangs in heavy folds from every peg, lies in fat rolls along the walls, drapes across the bench like a living pelt. The whole room feels swaddled. A woman near the hearth looks up from her handcards. Wisps of newly teased wool drift around her like slow-motion snow. She smiles, quiet, tired, but genuine, and tips her head. "Come in, stranger. Shut the night outside." You do, and the difference is immediate. The fire is only a handful of coals, yet the air is soft, almost cushioned. Wool drinks sound and gives back warmth.
It is the medieval miracle fabric. Warm when wet, slow to burn, stubbornly loyal to body heat. England's fields grew sheep before they grew much else for a reason. The bed dominates one wall, a broad box piled so high with blankets that it looks like a small hill wearing a woolen coat. The topmost cover is a vast, dense blanket the color of storm clouds, its edges fringed with use rather than decoration. The father lifts it with both hands the way a priest lifts a chasuble, reverence for something that has kept generations alive. When he lets it fall, it lands with a heavy, satisfying whump that seems to push the cold back toward the corners. The mother presses a folded tunic into your arms. It weighs as much as a hauberk. You bury your face in it. Lanolin, smoke, sheep, safety. This is not fashion. It is insulation you can wear to sleep. In a damp climate where a night's rain can soak through thatch and walls, wool's ability to hold warmth even when sodden was worth more than gold.
A small boy tugs your sleeve and offers up a knitted cap the size of a cooking pot. He pats his own capped head, then yours, insistent. You pull it on. Instantly, your ears stop aching. The top of your head feels cradled. He nods, satisfied, and launches into a proud explanation in the piping voice of someone repeating a lesson learned at a grandfather's knee. Heads where the warmth runs away fastest. Ma'am says it's like smoke up the chimney if you leave it bare. Caps for sleeping, always. He is right. Modern science only confirmed what these children knew by touch. Up to a third of body heat loss on a cold night can pour out through an uncovered head. A simple wool cap was a nighttime lifesaver. You hand the cap back reluctantly. The boy shakes his head, "Keep it, stranger," and scampers off to burrow into the wool mountain already claiming his siblings. Every movement in the room is slow, deliberate, energy hoarded the way a miser hoards coins. Blankets are smoothed, edges tucked, bodies arranged like logs in a well-built fire. Smallest in the middle, adults forming the outer wall.
When the last candle is pinched out, the only light is a faint red seam beneath the hearth door and the softer glow of wool itself, holding the memory of daylight. You stand wrapped in the heavy quiet, breathing air that smells of lanolin and wood smoke and human effort. Somewhere under all those layers, the family is already generating its own small climate, degree by careful degree. Wool does not shout its protection. It simply refuses to let the cold win. And tonight, once again, the cold will lose. The father gives a low chuckle that rumbles like distant thunder. "Leave your head bare," he says, tapping his own thick cap, "and the frost wights come sniffing. They nibble little holes in your dreams till you wake up tangled and cross. My old dad swore it was true, and he never had a bad night's sleep in his life." The children giggle, half believing, half teasing. the way children always do with stories that sit right on the edge of truth. You watch them finish the careful layering. First a lighter, scratched blanket to lie on, then two heavier ones pulled up to the waist, and finally the treasure, the dark, almost black coverlet that feels like midnight made soft.
It came from the fleece of a single prize ewe, shorn on the first warm day after lambing, spun by lamplight through 3 long winters, woven on a loom the grandmother rocked with her foot while singing the same 3 songs over and over. When the father smooths it across the bed, the gesture is slower than prayer. Your palm rests on the surface and you feel it begin, the slow, deliberate gathering of heat. Wool does not throw warmth at you the way a blaze does. It waits, patient as earth, then drinks every spark your body offers and gives it back richer. 10 minutes from now, the bed will be a quiet oven. An hour from now, it will be the warmest place in the village. You notice the walls again. Rough, undyed cloth is tacked or hung in overlapping folds wherever the wind finds a seam. It billows gently when a gust punches the timbers outside, absorbing the blow like a living lung. Wool on the walls, wool on the bed, wool against every inch of skin. This house has wrapped itself the way a caterpillar wraps a cocoon. The old woman sets her cards aside, rubbing fingers shiny with lanolin. "We grease the outer cloaks with tallow and a drop of birch oil," she says, wrinkling her nose even at the memory of the smell. "Stinks like a wet dog for a week, but the wet stays out and the warmth stays in. Better a ripe house than a dead one." She does not need to say the rest. Every child here has grown up knowing that the sheep in the fold are not just coin on the hoof. They are nights survived, fevers broken, babies kept alive until spring. Kings taxed in wool, lords dressed in wool, merchants grew fat on wool, and peasants slept or died by wool. The whole kingdom ran on the curl of a sheep's back. The room quiets. The hearth sinks to a single ruby eye. The heavy curtains along the wall breathe in and out with the wind's rhythm, soft as a giant sleeping cat. A girl's voice, thick with approaching dreams, whispers, "Don't let the cold creep under the door, Will." Her brother answers by hooking an arm around her and dragging her closer. Not tonight. Wolves on guard. The last candle is pinched. Darkness folds down, thick and comforting as the blankets themselves. You pull off the gifted cap, hand it back to the boy who is already half buried in the wool mountain, and rise. The old woman lifts a hand in farewell, fingers still dusted with pale fiber like frost. Outside, the night slams into you again, sharp, bright, merciless. But the cold finds less purchase this time. Somewhere under your own cloak, the memory of thick, lanolin-rich wool clings to your skin like a secret. You walk on, breath streaming silver in the moonlight, carrying a small, stubborn ember of warmth that no wind can quite reach. There are still corners of the village waiting, still lessons the winter has not finished teaching. You follow the snow's faint gleam toward the next faint glow, ready for whatever quiet miracle comes next. You follow the moonlit lane until the cottages thin and the path widens. Ahead stands a Hall house, taller, broader, its timbers straight and proud, its thatch thick and neatly clipped. Light, real, golden, unafraid light spills between the shutters in generous ribbons. The door is heavy oak bound with iron, yet it swings open easily, as though the house itself is glad to show what money can buy in January. Inside, the air is soft as fresh milk. A low, steady fire of split ash logs burns on a proper stone hearth, not a circle of river stones in the middle of the floor. The warmth rolls out to meet you in slow, deliberate waves. Your cloak loosens of its own accord. Your shoulders drop as if someone has lifted a yoke. The floor is strewn with woven rush mats over layered wool rugs, bright dyes, geometric patterns, things that would be the pride of any peasant's lifetime. Your boots make almost no sound. And there, against the far wall, raised on a carved oak frame a full 2 feet off the chill earth, sits the wonder, a feather bed so deep and inviting it looks like a small hillock of snow that has somehow learned to radiate heat.
The lord of the house, gown of quilted silk lined with fox, beard trimmed, hands clean, sees where your gaze is landed. He smiles the easy smile of a man who has never banked a fire with his own hands and yet knows exactly how precious this bed is. "Go on," he says, voice low, amused. "Touch it. Most folk only ever see one from the doorway." You step forward and lay your palm on the surface. Your hand sinks wrist deep, enveloped by goose down so fine it feels like warm mist made solid. The feathers shift and sigh, reshaping themselves around the exact contour of your fingers. It is nothing like straw, nothing like wool. It is forgiveness made physical. He rests a hand on the carved post. "My grandfather bought the first sack of down the year the Flanders fleet came to Lynn with 20 more. Took 3 generations of careful plucking to fill it proper. When I marry my daughter, half of this bed goes with her, the other half stays for my son. That's how we measure wealth in winter, by how many nights it can keep the cold from touching spine and soul."
His wife unfolds a linen sheet so fine it could almost be modern percale. It drifts down like moonlight and settles over the down without a wrinkle. Over that comes a quilt of scarlet and indigo squares. Then the masterpiece, another entire quilt of silk-faced down, light as a thought, yet so warm that the air above it actually shivers. A young servant, barely more than a boy, carries in 3 pillows tied in a clean cloth. He beats them once, twice with practiced snaps. The feathers hiss and plump until each pillow is nearly spherical. From their seams drifts the faint sweetness of dried lavender and rose petals sewn into tiny muslin sachets inside. "For sound sleep and sweet dreams," he says, cheeks pink, "and to keep the moths from feasting." You can almost feel the bed calling. "Lie down," it whispers. "Let the cold argue with someone else tonight." The lord's wife smooths an imaginary crease and adds, almost shyly, "On the worst nights, we add the bearskin from my dowry, but tonight even the wind knows better than to test this bed."
Somewhere behind the woven hangings that divide the hall, a log settles in the fire and sends up a bright, unnecessary flare. The room is already warmer than any church on Easter morning. You draw a slow breath of beeswax, wood smoke, lavender, and privilege. For the first time all night, winter feels like a story someone else is telling. And the feather bed waits, serene and triumphant, proof that when people can afford to fight the season with money instead of only bodies, they build small heavens right in the middle of the dark. The faint perfume of chamomile and dried rose drifts up from the pillows as the daughter shakes them one last time. It is not the heavy sweetness of a perfumer's shop, but the gentler breath of summer meadows carefully folded away in linen sachets and tucked between feathers. Householders who could afford it believed these scents quieted the mind, warded off unwholesome airs, and coaxed sweeter dreams. After a long day of winter gloom, even wealthy craved that small mercy.
You sit carefully on the edge of the great bed. The mattress receives you the way deep water receives a diver. A slow, silent, complete surrender. No crackle of straw, no coarse tug of wool, only a buoyant hush as the goose down reshapes itself around your weight, and then gently pushes warmth back upward. You understand, in the space of one heartbeat, why wills fought over these beds the way knights once fought over castles. The lord of the house laughs softly at your expression. Some priests swear the bed must stand free, away from damp walls, or the feathers knot like old rope. Others insist it belongs against the warmest chimney breast. My father moved it 4 times in one winter before deciding the argument itself kept him awake more than any draught ever could. He lifts his hands. In the end, sleep where you sleep best. His wife sets a long, firm bolster at the head, a feathered cylinder as thick as a man's thigh. It will prop shoulders, block stray gusts that sneak past the bed curtains, and serve as a soft rampart between sleeper and wall.
Their daughter follows with a wolf fur throw, the pelt still glossy after years of careful brushing. She trails her fingers through it the way another child might trail them through harp strings. When the wind howls hardest, she whispers, I pull it right over my head and pretend I'm a bear in her den. The cold can't find me then. The final blanket comes from the cedar chest. Heavy Flemish wool dyed a deep moss green, its border worked in tiny embroidered vine leaves. When it settles, the bed is complete. A low mountain of linen, down, silk-faced quilts, wool and fur, an engineered fortress whose only purpose is to defy January. Above it, the tapestry glows in the firelight. A stag forever leaping, hounds forever pursuing. Trees woven so thickly that the wall behind them disappears. It is beautiful, yes, but it is also a woolen silk shield. Every inch of it steals another breath of warmth from the room and refuses to give it back to the night.
The girl pads to the bed's edge, climbs the little wooden step, and slips beneath the covers. The mound of quilts rises, sighs, and swallows her whole. Only her small face remains visible, flushed and already half dreaming. "Good night, stranger," she murmurs toward the woven forest on the wool. "Keep the wolves away." The fire settles into steady, unhurried burning. Someone will feed it twice before dawn, a luxury no peasant can claim. The room folds itself into quiet, the way the quilts folded around the child. You rise, reluctantly. The mattress tries to keep you. It takes real effort to stand. The Lord lifts a hand in lazy farewell. His wife inclines her head, the firelight catching in the silver threads at her temple. You feel the weight of their kindness settle in your chest like an extra quilt. At the door, you pause, hand on the iron latch. Behind you, the great bed exhales, one soft, collective breath of goose down and warm humanity. Then you step outside.
The night lunges. The wind is a living thing now, edged with new teeth. It rips the warmth from your skin in greedy mouthfuls. Your lungs seize at the shock of it. Yet somewhere under cloak and tunic, against the hollow of your throat, a ghost of chamomile and feathers still clings, a small, stubborn ember carried out from the richest house in the village. You pull the cloak tighter, watch your breath spiral upward like a pale spirit released, and set off again through the glittering dark. There are more doors ahead, more lessons the winter has not yet finished teaching, and the night is still long. You press on, leaning into the wind that tries to shove you backward toward the warm memories you've already collected. The village lane narrows again, and the houses close in like conspirators. One of them catches your eye. Taller than its neighbors, the upper story jutting forward on great oak brackets, so the whole building seems to lean protectively over the lane. A thread of smoke rises straight and thin from a little louver in the roof, as though even the smoke is reluctant to leave.
Inside, the air is quiet, but unmistakably warmer than the open halls you've left behind. The reason reveals itself at once. Set into the thickest wall is a boxed-in sleeping place, a bed built right into the bones of the house. It is beautiful in its simplicity. Thick planks form 3 walls and a low ceiling. The 4th side is open, but screened by a heavy wool curtain dyed the color of blackberries. The whole recess is raised on a low platform, above the cold that pools on the floor, below the smoke that drifts under the eaves. Someone long ago padded the back wall with an old horse blanket and a layer of felted wool. Generations of sleepers have polished the wood with their warmth until it gleams like dark honey. The woman of the house, mending a heel by the low fire, looks up and smiles the small, knowing smile of someone who has never once taken this niche for granted. "My grandam was born in that bed," she says, "and her mother before her. Come, feel it."
You kneel, push the curtain aside, and the space opens like a secret. It is only a little longer than a man lying down, and barely wide enough for 2. Yet the moment you cross the threshold, the world changes. Your own breath bounces back, already warmer. The low ceiling presses the heat downward. The timber walls refuse to let it escape. Within a minute, the little chamber is its own small climate. You stretch out for a moment on the thick straw tick. The wool padding behind your shoulders is body warm before you even settle. It is like being swallowed gently by the house itself. Some call them cupboard beds, some wall beds, the woman says, stitching steadily. Folk in the next shire name them kists of comfort. Whatever the tongue, they all do the same work. Steal your warmth and keep it for you, the way a good friend keeps a secret. She explains how the design grew from necessity. In a long, low cottage with a central hearth, smoke rises and cold falls. The middle air, neither floor nor rafters, is the only kind place.
Raise a bed into that middle air, box it in, curtain it tight, and a family can sleep almost as warm as lords for the cost of a few days' carpentry. A small boy barrels in, cheeks red from the cold, and dives headfirst into the niche beside you like a terrier into a burrow. He smells of snow and wood smoke. Without ceremony, he wriggles under the blanket, props his carved wooden horse on his chest, and declares, "It hugs you back. The walls do. That's why it's the best." You laugh, quietly so as not to break the spell, and feel the truth of it. The niche does hug. The low ceiling cups the heat of your head. The planks press gently against shoulder and hip, and the curtain falls closed, and the little world is complete. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters like an angry guest denied entry. Inside this wooden womb, the cold can prowl all it likes. It will still be waiting on the wrong side of the curtain when morning comes.
You linger another moment, letting the small boy's warmth and the house's warmth mingle around you, then crawl out with real reluctance. The woman ties off her thread, bites it clean, and gives you a nod that feels like blessing. Somewhere deeper in the night, more doors, more fires, more quiet inventions against the dark are still waiting. You draw the curtain closed behind you, step back into the hissing cold, and go on. You linger a moment longer inside the little wooden womb, breathing the same air the boy has warmed with his laughter. The woman's voice drifts in, soft as the curtain itself. "My mam swore the walls keep the dreams from spilling out. Said thoughts stay clearer when your head doesn't freeze." She gives the small sideways shrug of someone who has never needed proof. The niche itself is proof enough. Then you crawl out, joints grateful for the stretch, and the boy presses his carved horse into your palm, warm from his grip, smooth as river stone. He's for luck against the snow whites, he whispers, solemn as a knight dubbing a squire. You tuck the tiny steed inside your coat, right over your heart, and the wood seems to throb once, like a second heartbeat. The curtain falls shut behind you with a motherly rustle. Warmth stays trapped inside, already waiting for the family to slide in later and seal the night away. Outside, the cold is waiting too, but it feels different now, less like a predator, more like a loud neighbor you've learned to ignore. Snowflakes drift down in slow, deliberate spirals, brushing your cheeks with the gentlest of reminders. We are still here, but so are you. You move on. The next cottage crouches lower than the others, its roof steep as a church, its walls so thick with daub that the timbers almost disappear. Strips of old wool rag flutter from the doorframe like prayer flags. When you push through them, the air changes again. This time, the warmth does not come from fire. The hearth is little more than a red eye winking beneath ash, but from fabric. Great bed curtains, thick as rugs, hang from iron rods that span the entire width of the room.
They are drawn 3/4 shut, creating a tent within the house. Inside that tent is another world. A man stands on a low stool, running a boar bristle brush down one of the panels. Dust drifts off in pale clouds. He glances over, unhurried, and beckons you closer with the same motion he might use to invite you to share a cup of ale. Keeps the heat in and the worries out, he says, patting the heavy weave. Fire dies, curtains don't. You step through the gap he makes for you, and the difference is immediate. The air inside the curtained enclosure is still, almost humid with trapped warmth. It smells of wool, sleep, and the faint sweetness of dried apple stored somewhere beneath the bed. The curtains, undyed russet on the outside, lined with patched remnants of every color the family has ever owned, billow only slightly when the wind punches the walls outside. They swallow sound, swallow cold, swallow everything but the people they were sewn to protect. The bed itself is simple, a low frame, a thick straw mattress, blankets piled like storm clouds.
But the curtains turn it into something else entirely. A room within a room, a ship, a lung. You reach out and touch the nearest panel. It is 2 fingers thick, felted in places, quilted in others, and heavy enough that your arm drops under its weight. 4 generations of patches, the man says proudly. Every tear stitched, every spare scrap added. My wife says it's half the reason we've all lived so long. Her mother swore the curtains breathe with us. He pulls the final panel across, leaving only a hand-width gap for air and light. Instantly, the temperature climbs another degree. You can almost hear the cold prowling on the other side, sniffing at the weave, finding no purchase. You stand inside the soft red darkness and feel what the villagers felt. Not just warmth, but safety. The curtains do not merely block wind, they declare, quietly and stubbornly, that this small circle of air belongs to the family, not to winter. Somewhere inside the folds, a child sighs in sleep. The great cloth lungs inhale, exhale, and the night goes on.
You slip out again, letting the panels fall together behind you like a theater curtain at the end of a play. The man gives you a nod that carries whole winters of gratitude and pride. Outside, the wind howls its frustration, but you smile into it now. You have a carved horse in your pocket, a belly full of remembered warmth, and the knowledge that somewhere behind those thick curtains, a family is sleeping inside a cloth fortress no king could storm. The snow keeps falling, the village keeps its secrets, and you walk on, lighter than before, toward whatever small miracle waits behind the next flickering light. You slip through the gap in the curtains, and the world shrinks to the size of a heartbeat. Warm air, human warm, breath warm, strokes your cheeks like a living thing. The woman is already there, kneeling on the lower mattress, tying fresh sachets of lavender, margarine, and mint along the rod overhead. Each little bundle gives off a cool green scent that pushes back the wool and sleep staleness that gathers in any closed space.
Keeps the air sweet, she says, knotting the last thread, and reminds us summer's only sleeping, not dead. She pats the mattress beside her. You sit, and the heavy curtain falls shut behind you with the soft final thud of a door closing on the rest of the world. Instantly, the temperature climbs. The straw beneath you is still faintly cool, but the wool blankets above and the thick curtain walls have already captured the day's hoard of heat and are giving it back in slow, generous measure. You feel it rise around your shoulders like warm water in a bath. Your fingers find the inner face of the curtain. 3, sometimes 4 layers of densely woven wool, patched and repatched, quilted in places with spare yarn until no needle of wind can find a way through. The stitching is plain but fierce. Thick linen thread pulled so tight it could moor a boat. My mother taught me, the woman says, following your hand with her eyes. Every tear is a door for the cold. Every patch is a promise kept.
She touches a faded square of indigo near the hem. This was her best cloak once. Now it keeps her grandchildren warm. Funny how things travel. The man ducks in, lowering his head beneath the rod. Frames held since my grandsire's day, he says, rapping the oak with his knuckles. He added an extra rail the winter the great frost killed the apple trees. Said if the house wouldn't stand the cold, the bed must. The wood answers with a low, satisfied thunk. Old, but still proud. He laughs then, a quiet rumble. They say in the next village that a curtain full of holes invites Jack Frost himself to come lie between husband and wife. We keep ours stitched tighter than a miser's purse. You lean back against the bolster and let the little chamber do its work. Light filters through the weave in honey-colored patches that drift across the blankets like sunlight seen from underwater. The wind outside is a muffled moan, as though the night itself is trying to speak through a closed mouth. In here, the only sounds are the slow breathing of the 3 of you, the occasional pop from the distant hearth, and the soft rustle of herbs when someone shifts. Privacy, warmth, memory, all sewn into the same cloth. After a long, delicious minute, you lift the curtain again. The main room rushes back. Colder, sharper, louder. The shock steals your breath for a second. You hadn't realized how completely the curtains had built a summer afternoon inside a January night. The woman is already smoothing the last blanket, tucking it with the same care a sailor reefs a sail before a storm. She looks up and gives you a small, conspiratorial smile. The smile of someone who knows exactly what she has made and exactly why it matters. You step out, letting the curtain fall together behind you like a theater curtain at the end of the best scene. The cold in the room feels almost insulting now, but you carry the memory of that woven cocoon against your skin the way you still carry the little wooden horse over your heart.
Somewhere ahead, another glow, another quiet invention against the dark is waiting. You pull the door shut behind you and walk on, lighter again, richer again, ready for whatever the winter still has left to teach. You step inside and pull the heavy door shut behind you. The wind dies as if someone has slammed a gate on the night itself. The warmth hits you like a wall, not the polite, tended warmth of a hearth,
but something deeper, older, animal. It rises from the packed earthen floor, from the thick layer of straw and manure that steams gently underfoot, from the broad flanks and slow breathing of the beasts. The air is thick with the sweet fermented smell of cattle, the sharp tang of goat, the dusty comfort of hay. Your lungs fill with it, and for a moment, the cold feels like a bad dream you've just woken from. A soft lantern swings from a roof beam, throwing gold across the low space. 2 cows turn their great heads to regard you with mild, liquid eyes. A nanny goat chews thoughtfully, jaws moving in slow circles. Hens murmur and resettle on their perch, feathers fluffed into perfect spheres. Every creature is a living furnace, giving off heat the way a hearth gives off light. The man on the stool, face weathered, hands steady, ties off a length of leather and smiles. "Shut the door quick, friend," he says, voice low so as not to startle the stock. "We're warmer than the hall tonight." He's not exaggerating. The animals, 6 cows, 3 goats, a dozen hens, throw out more steady heat than any single fire you have met in the village. Their breath alone is a gentle steam that rises and is caught by the low thatch, then drifts down again like a living canopy. The thick bedding beneath them, straw trodden and manured and retrodden for months, has turned into a slow composting blanket that radiates warmth from below as surely as the beasts do from above. You step farther in and feel the floor itself pulsing with heat through the soles of your boots. It is the closest thing to walking on a hearthstone you have ever known. The man pats the flank of the nearest cow. "They give milk, they give dung for the fields, and on nights like this, they give us summer," he says. "When the wind cuts like a scythe, we bring the little ones in here to sleep, safer than any cottage." You notice now, in the far corner, a low platform of planks has been laid over the bedding, and on it lie 2 small shapes wrapped in blankets. Children, no more than 5 or 6, curled against the warm side of a cow, the way sailors once curled against a galley stove. One small hand rests on the cow's broad neck, rising and falling with each slow breath of the beast. The child's face is flushed, peaceful, utterly trusting. The herdsman sees where you look and gives a soft laugh. Better than any featherbed. The cow complains less, and she never lets the fire go out. He rises, stretches, and moves to a pile of fresh straw. With a pitchfork, he tosses a thick layer over the soiled bedding, banking the heat the way another man banks a hearth. The cows shift appreciatively, hooves thudding softly. "Some winters," he says, "the old folks slept out here, too, when the thatch froze inside the house. Said the breath of the herd kept the death chill away better than any charm." You stand in the golden half-light, surrounded by slow breathing and gentle heat, and understand something new. In the hardest months, warmth was not only a human project, it was a collaboration between species. People and livestock kept each other alive, sharing breath, sharing heat, sharing the long dark. The cow nearest the children lowers herself carefully into the straw, sighing like a ship settling at anchor. The little boy's arm slides naturally around her neck, and the great beast becomes a living, breathing hot water bottle. You draw one last lungful of the dense, fertile warmth, then ease the door open again. The night rushes back in, sharp, bright, hungry, but it meets resistance now. Something of the barn's heat has soaked into your bones, and you carry it with you like a secret lantern.
Somewhere ahead, another faint glow waits. The village is not finished teaching you how life refused to freeze. You step back into the snow, close the barn door gently behind you, and walk on, richer, warmer, and readier than before. You settled onto the edge of the low platform, and the warmth rises to meet you like a tide. The straw is deep, springy, almost hot beneath the coarse blanket. A lazy wave of cattle breath rolls over your face, sweet with hay, warm as fresh bread. Somewhere above, a hen gives a sleepy cluck and rearranges her feathers. The small sound is swallowed instantly by the greater breathing of the barn. The herdsman leans against a post, lantern light.
Somewhere ahead, another faint glow waits. The village is not finished teaching you how life refused to freeze. You step back into the snow, close the barn door gently behind you, and walk on, richer, warmer, and readier than before. You settle onto the edge of the low platform, and the warmth rises to meet you like a tide. The straw is deep, springy, almost hot beneath the coarse blanket. A lazy wave of cattle breath rolls over your face, sweet with hay, warm as fresh bread. Somewhere above, a hen gives a sleepy cluck and rearranges her feathers. The small sound is swallowed instantly by the greater breathing of the barn. The herdsman leans against a post, lantern light catching in the creases of his smile. On the nights when the thatch ices inside the house, he says, we bring the pallets out here. Children first, then the old ones, then whoever else the cold is winning against. Never lost a soul yet. He nods toward the two small bundles, already curled against the cow's broad side.
One child has wriggled so close that the rise and fall of the cow's flank rocks him like a cradle. The beast does not complain. She simply lowers her great head and continues to chew, patient as the earth itself. Goats, he adds with a wink, are bolder company. They'll steal half your blanket and thank you for the privilege. Cows keep their dignity. Pigs, well, pigs don't know the meaning of dignity, but they'll warm your feet better than any stone from the hearth. He leads you to the pen where two fat sows lie in a nest of hay like pink boulders. Their breath steams in steady, contented puffs. One opens a lazy eye, grunts once, and goes back to sleep. The heat coming off them is astonishing. You can feel it on your shins, even standing a pace away. Some winters, he says, we open the door between byre and house and let the warmth walk in on its own four legs. The wall there, he taps the boards that separate barn from cottage, is warmer than any chimney back after midnight.
You rest your palm against the wood. It is true, the planks are body warm, almost throbbing with the slow pulse of the animals on the other side. Heat seeps through the cracks like light through a church window. Historians still argue over how often whole families slept among the beasts. Some say it was only in the hardest years when the frost came early and stayed late. Others point to the sheer number of cottages built with a byre under the same roof, one door for people, one for cattle, one wall between life and life. The truth, as always, probably depends on whose roof you were under and how cruel the winter decided to be. But standing here, surrounded by the slow, tidal breathing of creatures that never let their fires go out, the debate feels distant. Shame never entered into it. Survival did. The herdsman lifts the lantern higher so the light washes over the low rafters. Every breath in this barn is a prayer against the cold, he says quietly, and every night the cold loses.
A child sighs in sleep and burrows deeper against the cow's warm flank. The great animal shifts, making room without waking, and the rhythm continues. Breathe in, breathe out, stay alive. You draw one final lungful of the thick, living heat, then step back toward the door. The night outside is waiting, sharp, bright, merciless, but it meets you differently now. You carry the barn with you, the memory of cattle breath, of pig warmth, of children sleeping safer than any lord in his feather bed. You pull the door to behind you, gently, so the warmth stays inside where it belongs, and walk on through the snow, richer by another secret, warmer by another degree that no wind can steal. You step fully into the hall, and the door thuds shut behind you, sealing the night outside like a memory. The space is vast, longer than any cottage you have seen tonight, higher too. Great oak beams disappear into smoky darkness overhead, and the dying fire at the center throws a lake of red light across flagstones worn smooth by generations of feet.
The heat is not the sudden animal blast of the barn, nor the stubborn pocket trapped by curtains. It is slow, steady, almost regal. It has been here since dusk, soaking into stone and timber, and it will still be here when the first servant stirs before dawn. A broad hearth, wide enough for a man to lie across, dominates the middle of the floor. The fire has burned down to a mound of glowing logs the size of millstones, yet the stones themselves pulse with stored warmth. You crouch and hold your palms an inch above them. The heat rises in gentle waves, patient and certain. One of the servants, an older man with flowers still ghosting his sleeves, pauses beside you, arms full of split ash for the morning. "This one never truly dies," he says, nodding at the hearth. "We rake it down, cover the coals, and by the time the cocks crow, it's ready to roar again. A cottage fire fights for its life every night. This one knows its king."
He is right. The sheer mass of wood and stone holds heat the way a mountain holds snow. Even now, hours past midnight, the air near the floor is warm enough that you can loosen your cloak without shivering. Around the hall, the last tasks of the night are finishing. A girl sweeps ash into a wooden bucket, humming under her breath. Two boys fold heavy wool blankets that were spread on benches for the household retainers who slept here earlier, men-at-arms, traveling merchants, the priest when the roads were too foul to ride home. All of them could have claimed a corner near this hearth instead of trudging through the snow to colder cottages. You walk the length of the hall, boots echoing softly. Tapestries, thick, faded, glorious, hang along the walls. Hunting scenes, saints, strange beasts with emerald eyes. They do more than decorate. They drink the warmth and throw it back, the way the curtains did in the poorer houses. Only here the scale is baronial. Near the dais, at the far end, stands the Lord's great bed. Not a simple frame, but a room unto itself. 4 carved posts rise like young oaks. From them hang curtains of deep green damask lined with fox fur. Even from here you can see the mound of quilts and feather mattresses within. No one will sleep in it tonight. The Lord is away at court. Yet the bed waits, smug with down and certainty, knowing it could swallow the coldest night whole. The servant sets his logs in a neat stack and straightens. "On feast nights we sleep 50 in here," he says, pride creeping into his voice. "On the worst nights we sleep whoever can crowd in. The fire never minds extra bodies.
The stones remember the heat from Michaelmas to Lady Day. He gestures toward a row of iron hooks along the wall where travelers' cloaks still hang, dripping meltwater onto the flags. A pair of wet boots steams gently beside the hearth. Someone will wake to dry feet tomorrow, because this hall refuses to let the cold win. You linger a moment longer, letting the great quiet warmth settle into your bones.
It is not the intimate cocoon of the curtained bed, nor the fierce living heat of the barn. It is something grander, institutional, almost eternal. This fire has burned in this spot since before the conqueror, they say, and it will burn long after every soul now breathing is gone. When you finally turn toward the door, the cold outside feels almost insulting, a rude guest shouting after you have left a banquet. You pull your cloak tight, step over the threshold, and let the great door close with a heavy, satisfied thud. The night is still long, the snow still deep, the wind still sharp. But you carry the memory of a hearth that never surrenders, a hall that turns winter into a story someone else is telling. There are more doors, more secrets, more quiet victories waiting in the dark. You walk on, following the faint tracks of those who came before you, ready for whatever the village still has left to give. You settle on the bench, and the stone beneath you feels like sun-warmed earth in April. The great charred log, half buried in a bed of crimson coals, glows with deep, patient veins of orange, the way a dragon might glow in its sleep. The servant crouches beside it, poking the ash with a long iron. "This one's called the wakeman," he says, patting the log's flank. "Feed it once at dusk, and it minds the hall till the cocks argue with the dark. Even when the flames are gone, the stones remember." He is right. The flagstones under your thighs, the massive hearthstones, the very walls themselves, all have been drinking heat since sunrise, and now give it back in slow, generous breaths. The hall is a battery of warmth, charged by centuries of fire. A young woman glides past with an armful of rushlights, long pale stalks dipped in tallow until they gleam like candles made of bone. She sets them in iron holders along the wall, then pauses to warm her reddened hands over the embers. "Better than our loft above the kitchen," she says, flexing numb fingers. "Up there the wind finds every crack. Down here, the stones still think it's midday."
She trims a wick with her small knife, and the sharp scent of tallow and dried rushes rises, simple, honest, enduring. One rushlight will burn an hour. A dozen of them will shepherd the hall gently into dawn. A gust sneaks through the high louvre overhead, stirring the tapestries. Woven hunters lift their spears forever. A unicorn lowers its horn in eternal salute. The heavy fabric ripples, then settles, hugging the stored warmth back against the walls. From a side door comes a cloaked steward, rubbing life into his arms. He taps the stone with a knuckle, warm as bread crust, and grins. "Build with stone and feed the fire well," he says, "and winter forgets where you live." He leads you to a small alcove near the dais, half screened by a worn arras. A low pallet of folded blankets waits there, pushed close to the wall that drinks the hearth's heat all day. "The lads draw lots for this spot," he whispers. "Last year, 2 of them sprinted across the rushes at bedtime and near knocked the trestle over."
Winter slid in triumphant, only to find old Bran already curled there like a furry lord. Hound one. They slept around him like pages around a king. The woman with the rushlights laughs softly, lighting the last one.
A chain of tiny flames wakes along the wall, steady and gold. "Even the quality feel the cold," she says. "My lady keeps a stone at her feet wrapped in flannel, and the Lord's great bed has curtains thick as castle walls. But down here on the floor we have the best of it, the fire's own breath, the stone's memory, and the dog if he's generous." The servants begin to settle. A boy drags a cloak for a pillow. 2 girls stretch out back to back, sharing one blanket between them and another beneath. Someone starts a low song, 3 notes, repeated like a lullaby older than the hall itself. The rushes flicker. The embers answer with a soft pop, as though joining the chorus. You stand among them a moment longer, wrapped in the last exhalation of the day's fire.
The cold outside is a myth here. The stones refuse to believe in it. When you finally move toward the great door, every step takes you farther from the heart of the warmth and closer to the night's sharp edge. You pull the door open just enough to slip through. The wind rushes in, shocked to find you still alive with so much heat in your bones. Behind you, the door thuds shut. Ahead, the snow glitters under starlight, and the village sleeps on, wrapped in straw, wool, feathers, stone, and shared breath. There is still one last glow somewhere in the dark, one final secret the night has kept for you. You walk toward it, carrying the great hall inside your chest like a slow-burning log that will not die until morning. You kneel with them, close enough that the faint heat of the dying fire brushes your face like a tired hand. The woman's movements are slow, almost reverent. With the little wooden rake, she draws a pale blanket of ash forward, folding it over the embers the way a mother tucks a blanket under a sleeping child's chin.
Each stroke is deliberate. Too little ash and the coals will burn themselves out in lonely brilliance. Too much and they will suffocate in their own gray shroud. She knows the exact weight her wrist must give, the precise moment to stop. Her husband sets the last small log, no longer truly a log, more a glowing bone of oak, into the cradle of ash she has made. He does not lay it on top, he buries it, pressing gently until only the faintest red eye shows through the dust. Tomorrow morning that eye will still be alive, ready to flare when the ash is raked away and a breath of air kissed across it. "This is the real bedtime," he says quietly. "We put the house to sleep before we put ourselves to sleep." The child, bare feet, hair tousled from an earlier wrestle with blankets, pads over and solemnly offers you the little bundle of moss tied with faded red thread. "For the fire's dreams," she whispers, terribly earnest. "Grandma says if the embers have something soft to hold, they stay warmer till morning." Her mother smiles without correcting her. Some truths are too useful to argue with. You take the moss charm and tuck it gently at the edge of the hearth, just where the ash meets stone. The child nods, satisfied, and toddles back to her pallet. The woman smooths the final layer of ash with the flat of the paddle, worn black and shiny as obsidian from generations of the same motion. When she lifts it away, the hearth looks dead, a pale, lifeless mound. Only the tiniest wisp of smoke curls up, and the faintest warmth still radiates, patient as a heartbeat under snow. "Tomorrow," she says, "we will wake it with one breath and a handful of kindling. But tonight we trust the ash to be its blanket, and the dark to be gentle." She stands, brushes her hands on her apron, and the ritual is complete. The house itself seems to exhale. You rise with them. The room is already cooling, the fire's last gift given, but the memory of that careful burial lingers. Somewhere under the pale dust, a heart of oak still glows, waiting for morning,
the way a seed waits under winter soil.
At the door, the woman presses the blackened paddle into your hands for a moment, just long enough for you to feel its worn curve, its honest weight. Every house has one, she says. Every house needs one. You step back into the night. The cold snaps its teeth, delighted to have you again. But it finds you strangely unafraid. You carry the small moss charm in one pocket, and the memory of living coals under their gray quilt in the other. Somewhere ahead, one last glow, fainter, lonelier, braver, still flickers. You walk toward it, boots crunching through starlit snow. You carry every kind of warmth you have been given tonight against the final stretch of darkness. You stay crouched by the hearth a moment longer, watching the last rites of fire. The woman lifts a single coal, no larger than a walnut, its heart still glowing like a ruby in ash, with the tongs. She lowers it carefully into the center of the buried cluster, the place she calls the fire's heart.
On nights when the wind sounds hungry, she says, we give it one more heartbeat to carry us through. The coal settles with a soft hiss, swallowed by gray. For an instant, the ash glows brighter around it, as though the fire itself inhales. Then the light sinks again into patient darkness. Her husband draws the poker 3 times across the surface, 3 slow, deliberate lines. My father saw the heat spreads more evenly, he says, half smiling. Maybe it does, maybe it only spreads the comfort. Either way, we sleep better for it. The rushlight gutters lower, throwing long, dancing shadows across the walls. The girl finishes tucking the blankets, pulling an old cloak right over the feet of her younger siblings so no cold can sneak in at the bottom. The 2 little dogs nose their way under the edge, curling into tight commas of warmth against the children's shins. Their small hearts beat fast but steady, 2 more living hot water bottles added to the night's defense. The room is cooling quickly now. You feel it on the back of your neck, along the floorboards, in the sudden sharpness of each breath. The hearth no longer throws warmth outward. It has turned inward, guarding its own life beneath the ash, like a badger in its set. The woman sets the tongs aside and brushes her hands together. A faint trace of rosemary, last summer's harvest, still clings to her fingers. Grandmother sprinkled the pinch on the coals before covering them, she says, said it kept the dark from cussing too close. We don't always do it now, wood's dear and herbs dearer, but on the nights the wind howls like tonight, I still miss the smell. The rushlight gives one final flare and shrinks to a pinprick. In its dying glow you see the whole family already half asleep, shoulders rising and following together, the dogs sighing, the blankets forming a low hill that breathes in slow unison. The hearth answers with the faintest red pulse beneath its blanket of ash, a promise, nothing more, but enough.
You rise quietly. The cold in the room is already winning every corner the fire has abandoned, yet the family sleeps on, trusting the buried embers, the layered wool, the dogs, the shared breath of their own bodies. At the door, you pause. Behind you, the last glow of the rushlight dies and the cottage sinks into true darkness. Only the hearth still lives, quietly, stubbornly, faithfully, under its pale shroud. You step outside. The wind greets you like a slap, delighted to have you back. Snow stings your cheeks, the night feels suddenly deeper than before, but you are not the same traveler who entered this cottage. You carry the memory of a fire that refuses to die, of ash laid like a quilt, of a single extra coal placed at the heart of the night for the sole purpose of seeing a family through to morning. One final cottage, one final glow, waits somewhere ahead, smaller, lonelier, perhaps the bravest of all. You pull your cloak tight, smile into the teeth of the wind, and walk toward it, carrying every warmth you have been given tonight against the very last stretch of winter dark. You sit among them, shoulders brushing, the bowl cradled in your hands like a small hearth of its own. The stew is thick enough that the wooden spoon stands upright for a heartbeat before slowly toppling. Fat glimmers on the surface in trembling golden islands. You bring it to your lips, and the heat moves through you in two waves. First the steam against your face, then the rich, salty warmth sliding down your throat and spreading outward until even your fingertips tingle. The father tears a piece of dark rye bread and dips it, letting the broth soak in. Fire warms the room, he says, mouth half full, but this warms the blood. Empty belly, cold night. Full belly, you can laugh at the wind. His wife ladles another spoonful for the smallest child, blowing gently across it. Fat is the secret, she says. A skin of fat on top of the pottage holds the heat in the bowl the same way ash holds it in the hearth. By the time we lie down, our insides are still cooking.
The older boy leans in, eyes bright. Peas are best, he declares. One bowl of peas pottage and you wake up warm even if the blankets have slipped off in the night. My granddad swore a man could sleep in the snow on peas alone. They all laugh, quiet, comfortable, the laughter of people who have tested the claim and lived. She sets the smaller bowl before you. Dark, sticky cubes of salt pork, swimming in their own clear fat, the color of candle wax. This we keep for the blackest nights, she says. A mouthful before bed, and the cold forgets your name till morning. You take a piece. It dissolves slowly on the tongue. Salt, smoke, the memory of a pig that ate acorns under last autumn's sun. Warmth blooms deep in your chest, steady and unhurried, the way coals glow beneath ash. Around the table spoons scrape, breath steams, cheeks flush. The dogs sit close, noses twitching hopefully, knowing that whatever falls from this table is meant for warmth as much as hunger.
When the bowls are empty, the woman tips the last of the broth into each one, so nothing is wasted. Even the scraping of spoons feels ceremonial, gathering every drop of heat the pot is willing to give. You lean back, belly full, blood humming. The cold that waited outside seems suddenly far away, almost laughable. Somewhere under wool and straw, these people will lie down tonight with slow-burning furnaces inside their ribs, and the night will have to try harder than usual to reach them. The father wipes his mouth with the back of his hand and smiles at you across the steam. Fire can die, blankets can slip, but a warm gut keeps its own counsel till dawn. You rise at last, reluctant, the bowl still warm in your hands. The family presses the little bowl of congealed fat into your keeping. Traveler's portion, they call it. You tuck it inside your cloak, close to your heart, and step back into the night. The wind meets you with its old hunger, but tonight it finds a different man, one whose stomach glows like a slow ember, whose blood runs rich and hot, who carries an extra heartbeat of rendered fat against the dark. One final cottage, one final secret, still waits somewhere under the starlit snow. You walk toward it, warm from within, ready for whatever the winter still has left to teach. You push the door open, and the fragrance wraps around you like a shawl. Lavender, sage, rosemary, thyme, and something deeper, sweet woodruff perhaps, or meadowsweet, hang in thick bunches from every beam and nail. The air itself feels softer, warmer, as though the herbs have been breathing out summer all winter long. A woman stands at the hearth, turning a small iron pot on a trivet. Steam rises in slow curls, carrying the same scent that drew you here, only richer now, spiced with honey and something faintly sharp. She looks up and smiles the quiet, knowing smile of someone who has waited for you. "Close the door, love," she says. "The night is greedy tonight." You obey,
and the cottage seals you in with its gentle perfume. Bundles of dried herbs hang everywhere, above the bed, over the windows, even threaded through the rafters like green and silver garlands. Some are tied with red thread, some with simple twine. The walls themselves seem to exhale calm. She ladles golden liquid into a small wooden cup and offers it to you. "Winter posset," she says. "Hot ale, milk, honey, and the garden's last breath. Drink it slow. It remembers July." You cup it in both hands. The warmth seeps through the wood into your palms, then down your throat in a slow, sweet burn. The herbs, lavender, sage, a whisper of clove, unfold inside you like petals opening in sunlight. Your shoulders drop without permission. She watches you taste it and nods, satisfied. My mother's mother taught that a body full of good sense sleeps deeper and wakes lighter. Cold can't find purchase when the blood smells of summer.
She gestures around the room. Every bundle has its purpose. Lavender above the bed keeps the head clear and the dreams gentle. Rosemary by the door guards the threshold from chills and bad luck. Thyme and sage near the hearth keeps the lungs strong when the air bites. Meadowsweet and woodruff tucked into the pillows sweetens the night and softens hard thoughts. Some of the bunches are smoked lightly over the fire, so their fragrance rises anew each evening. Others are sewn into tiny pillows, no bigger than a child's fist, and warmed on the hearthstone before being slipped beneath a sore back or a fevered brow. She lifts one such pillow, soft flannel stuffed with hops, chamomile, and rose petals, and presses it into your hands. It is still hot from the embers. For travelers, she says simply, carry it against your chest when the wind cuts deepest. It will remember this room for you. The cottage itself is small, the bed narrower than most you have seen tonight, yet the air feels almost mild.
The herbs do more than scent. They seem to thicken the air, slow the escape of warmth, quiet the mind. Even the straw beneath the blankets smells faintly of mint. You breathe deeply and feel the posset settle in your stomach like a small, steady hearth of its own. The woman watches you with quiet pride. "Fire warms the skin," she says. "Food warms the blood, but scent warms the soul. On the longest nights, that is the part that must not freeze." She refills your cup without asking. You drink again, slower this time, letting the honey and herbs linger. When you finally stand to leave, she ties a small bundle, lavender, rosemary, and a single sprig of something silver green with a red thread, and presses it into your gloved hand. "For the road," she whispers, so the cold smells you coming and steps aside. You step back into the night. The wind hits you hard, but the fragrance rises from your cloak like a shield. The herbs breathe with you, lavender against your throat, rosemary tucked close to your heart, and the winter, for once, seems uncertain how to proceed.
One last cottage, one last secret, still glows somewhere ahead. You walk toward it, wrapped in the scent of a garden that refuses to die, warm from the inside out, carrying summer in your pocket and July on your breath. You sit among them, knees almost touching the hearth, the cup of herbal brew still warm in your hands. The woman lifts the lid from the small pot, and the steam that rises thickens the air with thyme, honey, and something darker, licorice root perhaps, or dried rosehip. She stirs once, twice, then sets the spoon aside. My man brings what the hedges still remember, she says, nodding toward her husband as he shakes snow from a fresh bundle of yarrow and mugwort. Every plant has its own temper. Some give warmth, some give calm, some keep the lungs from rattling when the frost gets in. She takes a palmful of crushed lavender and chamomile, folds it into a square of thin linen, and ties it with 3 quick knots. The pouch after pouch appears in her lap like soft coins minted from summer.
Under the pillow, she says, or inside the shirt, right against the heart. By the time the fire's only ash, the scent has done its work. You breathe it in with every slow breath, and the cold forgets where you are. The boy, still grinning the conspiratorial grin of successful pranksters everywhere, slips a sprig of dried mint into your gloved hand. For the road, he whispers. If the wind gets too loud, crush it, it shouts back. The father hangs his new-gathered herbs on a string above the hearth, high so the rising heat can coax the last of the moisture out. Some winters the hedges give nothing, he says quietly, and some winters they give just enough. You learn to listen for the ones that still smell green under the snow. He lifts a small pouch, already warmed by the fire, and tucks it inside his tunic, right over his heart. Tonight needs rosemary and thyme, he decides. Sharp breath, steady pulse. Tomorrow we'll see.
The woman moves to the bed and begins laying the finished sachets in a careful line beneath the top blanket. Lavender at the head for quiet dreams. Chamomile along the shoulders for loosened muscles. A thumb-sized bundle of mint at the foot to keep the toes honest. She laughs. She presses one last pouch into your palm. Warm, fragrant, impossibly light. This one's rosehip and meadowsweet, she says, for the very cold nights when the heart feels far from summer. Keep it close. You tuck it inside your cloak, next to the little bowl of fat from the last house, next to the carved wooden horse from the barn. They nestle together like travelers sharing a single blanket. The family settles. Blankets rise and fall in the way gentle hills do under wind. The fire is already low, but the room is steeped in herb scent, so rich it almost glows. Even the rafters seem to breathe lavender. You rise. The woman touches your sleeve once, lightly, the way one touches a child who is leaving home for the first time. Walk soft, she says. The night is listening, but the herbs are talking louder. You step outside.
The wind is waiting, fierce and clean, but the fragrance rises from your cloak in steady, defiant waves. Lavender, rosemary, meadowsweet. Summer's quiet rebellion against winter's loudest month. You pull the pouch to your nose, breathe deep, and feel the scent settle behind your ribs like a small, stubborn sun. There is still one final light somewhere ahead, the very last cottage, the very last secret. You walk toward it wrapped in the smell of gardens that refuse to admit defeat, carrying more certainty with every step that the night, for all its teeth, cannot quite reach you tonight. You settle beside her on the low bench, close enough to feel the faint breath of the dying fire. The nightshirt in her lap is the color of old bone, patched so many times that the original cloth is almost a memory. Yet it is soft, almost silken from years of washing in wood ash and soft water. She smooths it across her knee and keeps stitching. Linen next the skin, she says without looking up. Wool over the top. Linen pulls the damp away from you. Wool keeps the warmth in. Together they do what neither can do alone.
She lifts the garment so you can see the inside. The seams are flat-felled. Every edge turned so nothing rough touches sleep-tender skin. At the neck and cuffs, she has sewn narrow bands of softer wool, scraped thin with a teasel until it is almost like felt. These keep the cold from sneaking down the neck or up the sleeves, she explains. A finger width of wool at wrist and throat is worth a whole blanket if it slips off in the night. On a peg by the door hang the family's winter sleeping clothes. Long linen shirts for the adults, shorter ones for the children, and over them, heavy woolen gowns the color of storm clouds. Some have hoods, some are simply tubes of thick cloth with a slit for the head. Nothing is beautiful by daylight, but everything is engineered for the long dark. She holds up a child's tiny shirt. "This one's lined with an old blanket I cut down," she says. "Double linen, single wool between, light enough to move, warm enough to laugh at frost." She shows you the cleverest part. At the hem of each adult shirt, she has sewn a narrow pocket of wool.
"For the hands," she says. "When the cold creeps in at 3 in the morning, you slide your fingers in here and the shirt itself warms them back to life. No need to sit up and hunt for mittens. The husband comes in from banking the fire, cheeks red from the night air. He is already wearing his sleeping gown, a vast, shapeless thing of undyed wool that reaches his ankles and smells faintly of lanolin and wood smoke. He lifts his arms and the gown billows like a tent. Looks foolish, he admits, grinning, but once you're under the blankets, it traps a pocket of air warmed by your own breath. By the middle of the night, you're lying in your own little summer." He pulls from a chest a pair of thick woolen hose that reach to the thigh. "Legs lose heat fastest," he says. "These keep the blood from turning to ice before it gets back to the heart." The children are already in bed now, wearing their linen shirts and little wool hoods that tie under the chin.
One small girl has her arms out of the sleeves entirely, hands tucked into the wool pockets at her waist, smiling in her sleep like someone who has solved a secret. The woman finishes her last stitch, bites the thread, and folds the nightshirt with care. "Clothes for sleeping are as important as clothes for working," she says. "Maybe more. You can mend a roof in the cold if you must, but you can't mend a body that's frozen through while you slept." She hangs the shirt on its peg, beside its mates, ready for tomorrow night, and every night until spring finally remembers its promise. You rise, touching the soft wool one last time. Outside, the wind rattles the shutter like an impatient visitor, but you are armored now, in memory if not in cloth. You know exactly how many layers of linen and wool can build between a body and the longest night. There is still one final cottage waiting, the very last glow in the village, small and stubborn and brave. You step into the slicing cold carrying every warmth you have been given tonight. Straw, wool, feathers, stone, fat, herbs, and now the quiet genius of simple cloth worn in the right order. Nothing, not even winter, can take all of that away. You walk toward the final light, ready to see what the coldest hours still have left to teach you. You watch the quiet ceremony of dressing for the dark. Layer by layer, the family builds small private fortresses around their bodies. The father stands in his long linen shirt, soft from 100 washings, then pulls the heavy woolen jerkin over his head. It settles on his shoulders with the solid weight of a shield. He ties the cord at his waist, gives a little shrug to seat it properly, and already the wool begins to drink the last warmth of the hearth and give it back against his skin. Next come the long stockings, thick,
hand-knitted, the color of peat. He sits, rolls them slowly up his calves and thighs, and fastens each with a woven garter just tight enough to keep them in place without pinching.
Cold starts in the feet and climbs, he says. Stop it early, and it never reaches the heart. The mother slips thin linen gloves onto her hands, only to the wrists, light enough that she can still feel the blankets when she tucks the children in. Over them, on the very worst nights, she will add the bulky wool mittens that now hang from a string by the door, thumbs worn smooth from generations of sleepy fingers searching for warmth. The little girl is already proud in her rabbit fur-lined socks. She lifts one foot and wiggles her toes so the soft fur flashes white in the firelight. Grandmother says the rabbits gave their warmth willingly, she announces, so my feet never have to be afraid. Her mother ties the girl's nightcap under her chin, soft linen against the brow, thick wool outside. Every garment is patched, darned, turned, returned. Nothing here is new, yet everything is precious. The wool still carries its natural lanolin. When you press your face briefly to the father's jerkin, you smell sheep, smoke, and safety.
The woman folds the thick overtunic she has been mending and lays it ready for tomorrow night. We wash only when the thaw comes, she says, unembarrassed. The grease in the wool is another blanket we can't spare. She lifts a final piece, a wide, sleeveless mantle of heavy felted wool that the whole family shares on the very coldest nights. It is passed from sleeper to sleeper like a communal shield. Whoever wakes shivering claims it until the next person needs it more. One by one they move toward the bed. The straw mattress has already been warmed by the day's fire, and the careful layering of bodies will do the rest. They slide under blankets in their linen and wool armor, heads in caps, feet in socks, hands gloved or pocketed, cores wrapped tight. The fire gives its last small pop and sinks into embers. The room cools, but the family does not. They have dressed for battle against the long hours of darkness, and every stitch, every layer, every scrap of rabbit fur is a soldier in that quiet war.
You step back, careful not to disturb the hush that has fallen. The little girl is already asleep, one fur-lined foot sticking out from the blanket until her mother tucks it gently back in. At the door, you pause and look once more. 5 bodies, countless layers, one shared heartbeat of wool-warmed breath. Winter can howl all it likes. It will find no unprotected skin tonight. You pull your own cloak tight, feeling suddenly underdressed despite all you carry, and step into the night's final embrace. There is only one light left now, very small, very far down the lane. The last cottage, the last secret, the one that has waited patiently while you learned every other way humans refused to freeze. You walk toward it wrapped in everything you have been given: straw, wool, fat, herbs, stone, fire, and now the humble, stubborn genius of night clothes worn like armor. The cold is waiting, but it has never met anyone quite so thoroughly dressed for it. You smile into the wind and go to meet the final glow. You step inside, and the door thuds shut behind you, muffling the wind to a distant complaint.
The man is on his knees, back hunched, pressing a wet gray handful of daub into a hairline crack no wider than a knife blade. His fingers are black with clay and straw, yet he works with the calm certainty of someone tucking a child into bed. Each press of the spatula seals another breath of winter outside, where it belongs. His wife stands over him with the bucket, stirring slowly so the cow dung, clay, and chopped straw stay mixed. The smell is sharp, earth, manure, wet straw. But underneath it, you catch the fainter, comforting scent of the warm room they are fighting to keep. "Every autumn, the house tries to open itself to the cold," the man says without looking up. "Every winter we close it again. The walls breathe with the seasons, and we breathe with the walls." He finishes one crack and moves crab-like along the base of the timber frame, eyes hunting for the next betrayal. Wherever two beams have shrunk away from each other, he packs fresh daub, smoothing it with the flat of the spatula until the seam disappears. His wife lifts a fistful of loose moss, dry, golden, still smelling faintly of summer, and hands it to him. "For the bigger gaps," she says. "Daub holds the weather, moss holds the warmth." You watch him stuff the moss deep into a wider split, then seal it over with a final layer of daub. When he is done, the wall looks as solid as stone. She points to the corners where floor meets wall. There, old rags, wool, linen, even fragments of worn-out hose have been twisted into ropes and wedged tight. "Wind loves corners," she says. "We give it something to chew on that isn't us." Above the door hangs a heavy mat of woven rushes, ready to be lowered at night like a portcullis. Along the bottom of the walls run low barriers of stacked turfs, cuts of earth with the grass still clinging, another living seal against the crawl of cold across the floor. The man sits back on his heels and wipes his hands on a rag. "Stone houses laugh at winter," he says, "but wattle and daub only sighs and waits. If you listen close in January, you can hear the house asking to be mended." He gestures around the single room. Every crack you can see has been filled at some point this winter, some with pale new daub still drying, some darkened by years of smoke and repeat repair. The walls are a patchwork diary of every hard frost the family has outlived. His wife lifts a small basket of wool clippings, sheared scraps too short for spinning. "These go wherever the wind whispers loudest," she says, and tucks a pinch into a fresh seam near the window shutter. "Wool forgives more than clay." You run your hand along the wall. Where the daub is newly laid, it is cool and slightly damp, but behind it, the older layers are warm. The house itself is holding the day's heat and refusing to give it back. The man stands, stretches, and gives the wall an affectionate pat, the way another man might pat a faithful ox. "Tomorrow the wind will find new cracks," he says, "and tomorrow night will close them again. That is the bargain we made when we built her." Outside, the cold presses against the walls like a living thing testing for weakness. Inside, the house stands firm, patched, packed, stuffed, sealed, breathing slow and steady with its people. You step out again. The wind snatches at you, but now you know it has to fight past moss and rag and daub and wool before it can even reach the door. One last cottage, one last glow, the very last light in the village. You walk toward it carrying the knowledge that even the walls themselves are part of the long, quiet conspiracy against the cold. You press the last tuft of wool into the gap beside the doorframe, and it disappears like a secret swallowed by the wall. The girl watches, solemn and proud. "Old clothes never die," she says. "They just move into the walls to keep guarding us." Her mother smooths the final strand flat with her palm. "Wool remembers the sheep that grew it," she adds quietly. "Sheep stood outside in worse weather than this and lived. A little of that stubbornness stays in the fleece." Together, you step back and look at the house the way a captain might look at a ship before a long voyage.
Floor, thick woven rushes, still faintly sweet with last summer's meadowsweet scattered among them. Walls, wattle laced with daub, patched with clay, stuffed with moss, lined with rags and wool clippings. Windows, shutters braced with cloth and straw, frost held at arm's length. Roof, thatch, packed so tight it hums when the wind leans on it. Straw shoved deep into every cranny by long sticks and longer memories. Hearth, stones that will still be warm when the stars fade. The man rests a hand on the nearest beam. The timber is dark with age and smoke, scarred by generations of careful knives and careful hands. She creaks, she sighs. She tries to open herself to the cold every winter. And every winter we answer her back, not tonight.
He lifts the heavy rush mat that hangs inside the door and hooks it into place. It falls with a soft thud, another living seal against the night. The fire is now only a single red eye beneath ash, yet the room holds its warmth the way a clenched fist holds a coin. Every crack is stopped, every gap stuffed, every breath of wind turned away at the border. The little girl tugs your sleeve and points to the darkest corner. A brand new patch of daub still glistens, the handprints of father and child pressed side by side into the wet clay like an ancient signature. "That one's from this morning," she whispers. "We caught the wind sneaking in before it even knew it was caught." You lay your own palm beside theirs. The clay is already firm, already part of the wall, already learning how to stand guard. Outside, the wind circles the cottage once, twice, looking for the place it used to get in. It finds nothing but wool, moss, straw, daub, and the quiet, unyielding love of people who refuse to be cold. You step out for the last time tonight. The final light, the very last glow in the entire village, flickers far down the lane, small and brave and waiting. You pull your cloak tight, smile at the house that now stands stronger because you helped close one more crack, and walk toward that distant spark, carrying the knowledge that even the walls themselves are woven into the long, patient conspiracy against winter. Nothing, not wind, not frost, not the longest night of the year, can get past all of you tonight. She cradles the wrapped stone the way a mother cradles a child's hand. "This one goes at the feet," she says. "By the time we blow out the rushlight, the bed is already smiling." She lifts the long-handled warming pan again, slides it deep between the blankets, and moves it in slow, sweeping arcs, left to right, head to foot, the way a baker smooths dough. Where the pan passes, the heavy wool billows and settles again, exhaling a soft breath of heat that smells faintly of iron and last summer's lavender still trapped in the mattress.
Her husband watches with the quiet pride of a man who forged the pan himself. "Grandfather swore by stones," he says, tapping the dent in his own pan. "Father swore by iron. I swear by both. Stones hold the heat longer, but iron gives it quicker. On a night like this, we use whatever the fire is willing to lend." He tips a careful measure of glowing coals from the hearth into his pan, no more than a shallow cupful, closes the pierced lid, and hands it to you. The handle is warm through your glove. The weight is satisfying, like holding a small, obedient animal made of fire. You slide it beneath the blankets beside his wife's path. The two warm fronts meet somewhere under the wool, and the bed sighs, a long, contented sound that makes the children laugh from their corner. The woman lifts the lowest blanket so you can see. The straw mattress is already giving up its chill, the linen sheets losing their crisp, icy bite. In a few more passes, the entire bed will feel like it has been sleeping in sunlight. She takes the wrapped stone, places it near the foot, then adds a second one, still naked from the fire, this one for the middle, so the warmth rises like a slow tide from toes to heart. Poor man's bed warmer, she says, patting the stone. Costs nothing but patience and a strong back to carry it from the hearth. Her husband hangs the long-handled pans on their hooks, ready for tomorrow night and every night until spring. The coals inside will cool slowly, safely trapped behind iron and wool. Already the bed looks different. The hollows where bodies will lie are softly steaming, the blankets collapsed into welcoming curves instead of stiff, reluctant folds. The children clamber in first, squealing at the sudden luxury of warm sheets. They burrow like rabbits into hay, feet seeking the stones, shoulders wriggling until every inch of skin finds a pocket of heat. The woman smooths the top blanket, tucks the edges tight the way a sailor reefs a sail before a storm, and steps back.
Cold can have the night, she says quietly. It just can't have our bed. You hand the warming pan back, its handle now almost too hot to hold. The iron ticks softly as it cools, a small, satisfied sound. Outside, the very last glow in the village has almost winked out. One final cottage, one final secret, the coldest, perhaps bravest of all, is still waiting. You step into the night carrying the memory of iron sliding between sheets like a promise, of stones that remember fire long after the hearth forgets, of a bed that refuses to be cold no matter what the dark threatens. The wind snatches at you, but it is already too late. You are warm to the marrow, and the final light is calling. You let your hand linger beneath the blanket a moment longer, feeling the slow tide of warmth rise to meet your palm. The bed has become a small private summer. The straw beneath the sheets has lost its winter bite. The wool has softened, and the faint scent of rosemary and apple peel drifts up like a promise that the night will be kind.
The boy sets the clay jug on the hearthstone with both hands, careful not to spill. Steam curls from its narrow mouth, water heated while the bed was warmed, ready now for chilled fingers and sleep-heavy faces. His mother lifts the warming pan one last time, slides it out, and sets it safely on the stones. The lid gives a soft, metallic sigh as the last of the herb-scented heat escapes. Enough, she says. Any more and we'd be sleeping on toast. Together, they fold the blankets down, trapping the warmth exactly where bodies will lie. The stones at the foot are nestled in their wool wrappings. The warming frame is pushed back beneath the bed, like a faithful dog returning to its corner. The husband hangs both long-handled pans on their hooks. Their iron bellies tick gently as they cool, still glowing a dull cherry through the pierced lids. You stand. The room itself feels different now, quieter, gentler, as though the cottage has exhaled and decided to be merciful tonight.
The woman presses something small into your hand, a smooth, palm-sized stone, still warm from the hearth and wrapped in a scrap of wool the color of heather. "For your pocket," she whispers, "so the road remembers what the bed learned." The boy offers you a shy smile and a single dried apple peel from the bowl, curved like a tiny boat, still fragrant. You tuck it beside the stone. At the door, you pause. Behind you, the family is already climbing into the waiting warmth. Husband first, then wife, then the boy slipping between them like a small, hot coal of his own. Blankets rise and settle. Someone sighs, the deep, satisfied sigh of a body that knows it has won the night. You step outside. The wind hits you hard, delighted to find you alone again, but the stone in your pocket answers with steady heat. The apple peel breathes summer against your ribs, and the memory of that bed, warmed by iron, stone, herbs, and careful hands, walks with you like an invisible companion.
There is only one light left in the entire village now, the very last cottage, small and distant, glowing like a single candle set in a window for a traveler who is very, very late. You smile into the dark, pull your cloak tight, and start toward it. Winter has thrown everything it has at you tonight. Wind, ice, loneliness, the long, hungry hours. And you are still warm. The final secret is waiting, and you are ready. The monk's voice is low, almost lost beneath the faint echo of distant chanting that never quite stops in this place. Fire warms the body, he says, but too much warmth lulls the soul. We keep only enough heat to keep the flesh alive so the spirit stays awake. He lifts the single blanket on the nearest bed, undyed wool, much mended, thinner than any you have seen tonight. Beneath it lies only a coarse linen sheet and the straw-filled mattress. No pillow save a small wooden block wrapped in cloth. Each brother sleeps in his habit, he continues, touching the heavy wool of his own robe. The same garment by day and by night. It is warm enough when we lie close, yet never so warm that sleep becomes a temptation instead of a necessity. He gestures along the row, 20 beds, sometimes 30 in winter when traveling brothers seek refuge, set so near that a man's shoulder nearly touches his neighbor's. The shared breath of 30 men, the slow furnace of 30 hearts, is the only fire allowed here. You notice small details now. Each bed has a thin horsehair blanket folded at the foot, used only during the deepest cold, and even then with reluctance. The windows are unglazed, but fitted with wooden shutters pierced by tiny crosses. Through them, the wind enters freely, carrying frost that glitters on the stone floor like spilled salt. Between the beds, on the floor itself, lie several large, smooth stones, dark with age and use. The monk lifts one and turns it so you can feel its lingering warmth.
From the kitchen hearth after Compline, he explains. We carry them in silence and place one between every 2 beds. They give back the day's heat until maddens. Nothing more is permitted. He sets the stone down gently. It will cool long before the first prayer bell, but by then the brothers will be on their knees in the chapel, cold sharpening their attention like a whetstone. You ask the question that has been growing since you crossed the threshold. How do they bear it? The monk smiles, small, untroubled. Cold teaches us what we are not, he says. We are not our comfort. We are not our warmth. When the body shivers, the soul is quiet enough to listen. He leads you to the end of the dormitory where a single larger bed stands apart, the infirminarians. Here alone the blanket is thicker, a small brazier glows beside it, and a second horsehair cover is allowed. For the sick, he says simply, God is merciful to weak flesh. From the chapel the chant rises again, nearer now, the voices of men who have already risen once tonight and will rise again before dawn.
Their song is thin, cold, and impossibly steady. You step back into the corridor. The monk inclines his head in farewell. Outside, the wind has dropped to a whisper, as though even winter itself stands in awe of what it cannot conquer here. You walk away from the monastery, carrying the strangest warmth of the entire night. The knowledge that some people choose the cold on purpose, and having chosen it, sleep soundly beneath a single blanket and the shared breath of brothers. The village behind you is dark now, every hearth banked, every bed warmed by wool or stone or herbs or sheer stubborn love. Ahead, the snow stretches clean and moonlit toward morning. You pull the little wrapped stone from your pocket, press it against your heart, and start the long walk home. Richer, warmer, and quieter than you have ever been. You stand among them in the half-dark, the lantern's small circle of light moving from face to face like a slow blessing. They lie straight and still, hands tucked inside wide sleeves or folded on their breasts, hoods drawn up so only the pale ovals of their faces show above the blankets.
Breath rises in faint, regular clouds that mingle and drift toward the vaulted ceiling, the only warmth the room is allowed. The young monk who showed you the warm water jug now lies motionless, eyes closed, lips barely moving, already rehearsing the next round of psalms in silence. The jug beneath his mattress gives off no visible heat, yet you know it is there, a secret kindness pressed against the small of his back, like a quiet act of mercy the rule does not forbid. An older brother, near the end of the row, has drawn his feet up inside the hem of his habit and wrapped the lowest corner of his blanket around them, permitted because frostbite would hinder work and prayer alike. His face is calm, almost luminous in the moonlight that slips through the cross-shaped slits in the shutters. No one shifts restlessly. No one sighs or pulls the blanket higher. The cold is simply there, accepted, worn like another garment. The monk with the lantern sets it on the floor so the flame stands no higher than a man's heart. Warmth of flesh is fleeting, he whispers. Warmth of prayer is not. He lifts a pinch of dried thyme from the small bowl, lets it fall onto the lantern's tiny flame. A thread of sharp, clean scent rises, brief, permitted, gone. It is the only luxury the night will offer. Somewhere a bell will ring again soon, perhaps in an hour, perhaps in 2, and 30 men will rise from these hard beds without complaint, barefoot on frost-dusted stone, to sing in a chapel even colder than this room. They will do it tomorrow night and the night after, all the way to Candlemas and beyond, until one morning the wind finally turns its face away and the thaw begins. You back quietly toward the door. The monks do not stir. They have already learned the hardest and gentlest lesson of the winter, that perfect comfort is not necessary for perfect peace. Outside, the night feels almost mild after the dormitory's sacred chill. You pull the little wrapped stone from your pocket one last time, press it to your lips in silent thanks to the villagers who fought the cold with every scrap and ember they owned, and to the monks who met it with open hands and unshivering hearts.
Then you turn toward the east, where the first suggestion of dawn is only just beginning to gather behind the hills. The long winter night is ending. You walk home carrying more warmth than any fire could give. You settle beside them, close enough to feel the fire's breath on your face and the slow thaw of wool and leather. The girl pulls her cloak tighter, though she is no longer shivering. The ferryman was gone for the winter, she says, but he leaves the shed open for travelers. One wall missing, wind screaming through, yet better than the open road. Her brother nods. We burned 2 handfuls of twigs, just enough to warm a pot of ale and keep our fingers alive. Then we slept back to back, like spoons, hoods over our faces, feet toward the little fire. When the flames died, we still had each other's heat. He lifts his cloak to show you the trick they use. Each wears a short, sleeveless sheepskin jerkin under the cloak, fleece turned inward.
Light enough to walk in, heavy enough to sleep in. Between the fleece and our shared breath, we woke without frost on our eyelashes. Across the room, the lone wanderer has drawn his fire pot closer. He feeds it a single lump of charcoal no bigger than a walnut. The glow brightens, then settles again into patient red eyes behind the pierced lid. "Never let it go out," he mutters, more to himself than to you. A dead fire pot on the road is a dead man by morning. The innkeeper moves among his guests, topping up mugs, laying extra logs on the fire with the quiet pride of a man who knows his hearth is the only thing standing between these travelers and the wolves of winter. "Some nights," he says, "I sleep in my clothes by the door, listening for the knock that comes too weak to wake anyone else." He points to a row of low benches along the wall, each already claimed. Those who cannot pay sleep here by the hearth.
Those who can pay sleep upstairs where the loft holds the day's heat. Those who have nothing but a story sleep wherever there is room, and we find a corner. A peddler in the corner unwraps a long, narrow bundle, a wool blanket sewn with dozens of tiny pockets along one edge. Into each pocket he slips a smooth, warm stone taken from the hearth. When he rolls himself in the blanket, the stones lie along his spine and thighs like a string of small, faithful dogs. "Poor man's warming pan," he laughs. "Costs nothing but a strong stomach for carrying rocks." Another traveler, a woman with a pilgrim's badge pinned to her cloak, shows you the soles of her boots. Thick felt stitched on over the leather, still steaming. "Felt drinks the heat from the fire," she says. "Put your feet up near the flames for a quarter hour, and you carry the warmth with you half the night." The innkeeper sets a bowl of hot oat pottage in front of anyone who looks too hollow-cheeked. "Eat," he commands gently. "A warm belly is the best inn of all."
Slowly, the room settles. Boots are lined up to dry, cloaks hung like sleeping bats. Firepots and stone-filled blankets arranged around bodies that have learned exactly how little they can survive on and still keep walking tomorrow. You finish the last of your ginger ale, the mug now cool in your hands, and feel the road's ache finally loosen its grip. Outside, winter still prowls, hungry and tireless. Inside, travelers sleep in a careful pile of shared breath, borrowed heat, and small, fierce inventions. Firepots glowing like hearts under cloaks, stones tucked against spines, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder because two hearts beat warmer than one. You pull the little wrapped stone from your pocket one last time, lay it on the hearth to drink tomorrow's heat, and find a place among them. Dawn is still hours away, but the night has run out of ways to kill you. You close your eyes, surrounded by the soft snoring of strangers who have become, for one night, the warmest family you have ever known. Winter has lost another round. The manor rises ahead of you now, a dark bulk against the moonlit snow, its high stone walls capped with fresh white.
Torches burn in iron brackets beside the gatehouse, hissing softly when snowflakes drift too close. A watchman peers down, recognizes a traveler who has been expected, or perhaps simply recognizes another soul refusing to freeze, and the smaller wicket gate creaks open. Inside the outer yard, the air changes at once. The wind is tamed here, broken by high walls and the bulk of stables and kitchens. You smell wood smoke, roasted meat, warm horses, and something sweeter, spices carried on the breath of the great hall itself. A steward in a fur-lined cloak meets you at the inner door, bows, and leads you through passages already warming your face. Rushlights in iron sconces throw gold on tapestries and polished armor. The stones underfoot are no longer cold. The whole house is breathing heat, the way a dragon breathes in its sleep. He brings you at last into the great chamber above the hall, the Lord's own sleeping room. A fire roars in a hooded fireplace, large enough to stand in. A carved bed, as big as a peasant's cottage, dominates the room, its four posts thick as young oaks, hung with curtains of deep crimson damask lined with sable.
Within, layers of feather mattresses rise like fresh bread. Quilts of down and silk gleam in the firelight. Yet even here, winter is not mocked. A maid is on her knees before the bed, sliding a long copper warming pan between the sheets, its lid chased with the family's crest. She moves it in slow, practiced sweeps, while another servant follows with an embroidered linen bag filled with hot bricks wrapped in flannel. These are tucked at the foot and along the sides, 6 in all. On a low table sits a silver basin of spiced wine, kept hot over a spirit lamp. The Lord, a tall man still in his daytime velvet, lifts the lid, and the scent of cinnamon, cloves, and honey fills the room like incense. He greets you with the easy warmth of a man who has never truly been cold, yet who respects the cold all the same. Even stone walls and sable curtains are not enough, he says, gesturing at the bed. Winter finds the cracks in princes as easily as peasants. We simply have more layers to answer it.
He shows you the final touch. A small brazier of hammered silver stands on the floor beside the bed. Glowing charcoal breathes behind a pierced lid shaped like a castle. A few drops of rosewater and ambergris have been scattered on the coals. The perfume rises in slow, luxurious waves. The lady of the house, already in a fur-lined gown of silk, lifts a corner of the bed curtain so you can see inside. Between the sheets lies a soft wolfskin, fleece turned upward, and over that a coverlet stitched with tiny pockets of down, so light it seems to float. She laughs when she sees your wonder. We do not merely sleep. We disappear into warmth until morning. Yet even here there is discipline. The Lord lifts a small hourglass from the mantel. When the sand runs out, he says, the fire is banked, the brazier carried away, the curtains drawn tight. Too much heat makes a man soft. We take only what we need to keep the cold from our hearts, literally and otherwise.
Servants move silently, drawing the heavy curtains, banking the great fire until it is a mountain of glowing caves, setting a single candle in a glass lantern so the Lord may read his prayers if he wakes. You are offered a cup of the spiced wine. It slides down like liquid sunlight. Before you leave, the Lord presses a tiny silk pouch into your hand, embroidered with gold thread, warm from sitting near the brazier. Inside are 3 sweet almonds roasted in honey and a single clove. For the road, he says, so you remember that winter bows even to those who bow to it. You step out of the chamber, down the winding stair, past the dying torches and the sleeping watchmen. The gate swings open, and the night rushes in again, fierce and hungry. But now you carry every kind of warmth there is. The stubborn, patched warmth of peasants, the fragrant warmth of herbs, the disciplined chill of monks, the shared warmth of travelers, and finally the lavish, perfumed warmth of lords who can afford to wrap the night itself in sable and rosewater.
The snow is falling thicker now. The first pale hint of dawn still hours away. You pull your cloak, only wool, only one cloak, tight around you, smile at the wind, and start the long walk back through the sleeping village. Winter has shown you all its faces tonight, and not one of them has managed to make you cold. The lord of the chamber, still in his fur-trimmed robe of deep burgundy, sets the brass vessel on a low stand beside the bed. Steam no longer rises from it, yet when he tips it toward you, the stones inside glow like sleepy coals. River stones from the summer, he says, baked all day in the kitchen ovens, then carried up in insulated boxes. They give their heat slowly, the way a good wine gives its flavor. He lifts one with tongs and slips it into a flannel pouch embroidered with his wife's initials. The maid takes it and places it beneath the lowest mattress, right at the center where two bodies will meet. Two more follow, one for the feet and one for the small of the back. The noblewoman draws the great bed curtains halfway closed so you can see how completely they seal the space. Inside, the air already feels different, thicker, softer, almost humid with captured warmth. A small silver bell hangs from one post. She flicks it gently and it gives a muted chime. If the stones cool too quickly, she explains, we ring once. A servant sleeping in the alcove outside brings fresh ones without ever opening the curtains fully. The cold never finds us. On a side table stands a tiny brazier no larger than a helmet, its charcoal perfumed with amber and rose. A pierced lid, shaped like a rose, lets threads of fragrant smoke drift upward. She lifts the lid and adds 3 drops of some dark oil. The scent of summer oranges suddenly fills the little kingdom inside the curtains. Even the floor around the bed is considered. A thick wolf pelt rug lies atop the carpet, and beneath the bed itself, a second, older rug has been folded double, so no hint of chill can rise through the boards. The Lord pours 2 fingers of hot spiced wine from a silver pitcher kept warm over a spirit lamp. He offers you the cup. Drink, he says. In this house we believe winter must be fought with every sense. Warmth against the skin, spice on the tongue, perfume in the lungs, color before the eyes. You sip, cinnamon, honey, and something darker. Cloves, perhaps, or nutmeg, bloom across your tongue and slide down like liquid sunset. The maid finishes her work. A final goose-down quilt is shaken until it swells like a cloud, then laid atop the fox fur coverlet. She steps back, and the noblewoman herself draws the curtains fully closed. For a moment you see only a wall of crimson damask glowing in the firelight. Then she opens a hand-width gap, and the golden space within looks like a private sunrise. Inside there, she says softly, the wind forgets our names. From somewhere below comes the muffled thud of the great hall fire being banked for the night.
Up here, the only sounds are the gentle tick of cooling brass, the faint rustle of sable against silk, and the slow, steady breathing of a room that has decided winter is a guest who may knock but will never be allowed in. You are given a small parting gift, a silk pouch no larger than a quail's egg, warm from sitting beside the brazier. Inside are 3 sugared violet petals and a single clove. So the coldest mile home tastes of this chamber, the Lord says. You bow, the curtains close fully, and the great bed swallows its occupants in a hush of fur and feathers and spiced air. Outside again, the wind leaps at you like a joyful dog, delighted to have you back. Snow stings your cheeks, but you smile, because tonight you have seen every possible answer to winter. The peasant's stubborn daub, the monk's holy cold, the traveler's shared breath, and finally, the noble's perfumed, curtained, stone-warmed, fur-lined defiance.
You press the tiny silk pouch to your lips, taste violet and clove, and walk into the last dark hours before dawn
carrying the certain knowledge that somewhere, in every kind of house, human beings are winning against the night in their own fierce, beautiful ways. Winter is vast, but humanity, tonight, is warmer. You step inside, and the door shuts out the night with a soft thud. The warmth that greets you is small, but fierce, like a bird cupped in two hands. 3 children move in the low glow of a single tallow lamp and the dying hearth. The eldest girl, perhaps 9 winters, kneels on the hearthstone, palms spread above the embers the way flowers open to the sun. "I'm keeping the warm in my hands," she explains seriously, "so I can carry it to bed and give it to my toes." Her younger brother, bare feet, hair sticking up like thistledown, is already burrowed under a pile of blankets on the box bed built into the wall. Only his nose and 2 bright eyes show above the wool.
"The blankets are a cave," he whispers loudly, "and I'm the bear. Bears don't get cold." The smallest, a girl no more than 4, stands on a low stool while her mother pulls a long woolen nightgown over her head. It is 3 times too big, clearly handed down from an older sibling, and its sleeves swallow her hands completely. "My arms are hiding," she giggles, flapping the empty sleeves like wings. Their mother lifts the littlest one down and guides her to the bed. "Tonight we all sleep together, so the cold has to fight 4 hearts instead of 1. She shows you how they do it. First, the box bed is lined with straw that still smells faintly of summer meadows. Over the straw lies a thick woolen mattress stuffed with carded fleece. On top of that, 2 heavy blankets and 1 patched quilt stitched from scraps of every color the family has ever owned. The children clamber in like puppies, eldest first, then the boy in the middle, the littlest tucked against her mother's side when she joins them. Feet find feet, knees tuck behind knees, small heads nestle into the curve of bigger arms. Their mother reaches under the pillow and pulls out 3 treasures. A smooth, warm stone wrapped in red flannel. Tonight's bed warmer, heated while the porridge cooked. She slips it down to the foot of the bed. "For the toes," the eldest explains again, solemnly. A tiny cloth rabbit stuffed with dried lavender and warmed by the fire. The littlest clutches it to her chest. "Bunny remembers summer," she says, already half asleep. A wooden spoon, still warm from stirring the milk porridge. The boy presses it against his cheek and grins. "It's my sword against bad dreams." Their mother banks the fire with practiced care, then slides in last. She pulls one final blanket, an old cloak of her husband's, over all 4 of them. The box bed has a sliding wooden door. She pulls it almost shut, leaving only a hand's breadth for air and the faint glow of the lamp. Inside that small wooden cave, the children's voices grow softer. "Tell the warm story," the middle one pleads. Their mother's voice is a low, steady hum in the dark. "Once there was a little house made of blankets and straw and love. The wind came and knocked, but the house only laughed, because inside were 4 hearts beating together, and 4 hearts together make a fire nothing can put out." You stand quietly as the story fades into gentle breathing. The lamp is turned low. The cottage settles into its nighttime shape. Outside, winter prowls and sniffs at the door, but inside the box bed, 4 small bodies and 1 large one have woven themselves into a single warm creature that dreams of summer rabbits and porridge spoons and caves that never get cold. You slip out as quietly as you came. The night is vast and white and sharp, but you carry the picture of that tiny glowing world. 3 children curled like commas inside their mother's arms, a red flannel stone at their feet, a lavender rabbit against a sleepy heart, and the soft, certain knowledge that love, even more than wool or fire, is the oldest and best way humans have ever invented to keep winter from winning.
Dawn is still far off, but somewhere a child is dreaming of bears and warm-handed sisters, and the night, for all its teeth, cannot reach them. You walk on, smiling, lighter than you have ever been in snow. You sit among them, low to the ground, close enough to see the children's breath rise in tiny clouds that mingle above the blankets like friendly ghosts. The eldest girl, Foxchild, has curled herself into a perfect ball, knees to chest, arms wrapped tight. The warm stone now passed to her brother, pressed against his belly like a secret heart. "Foxes know," she whispers, eyes already heavy. "If you make yourself small, the warm stays inside." The boy, Bearchild, lies flat on his back, arms flung wide as if claiming the whole bed, but his feet have found his sister's shins, and his head rests against the toddler's soft curls. "Bears sleep all winter," he declares, in a voice that is already drifting toward dreams, "and wake up big."
The toddler, nestled in the warmest pocket between his siblings, has both fists tangled in the blanket and one thumb in his mouth. The too large nightcap has slipped over one eye. He doesn't bother to fix it. He is already in whatever country small children visit the moment the light goes out. Their mother tucks the final corner of the great blanket, pulling it up until only 3 small noses and a tangle of hair remain visible. She slips the lavender mint sachet under the edge of the pillow, where the scents can drift across their faces all night. "Smell keeps the dark gentle," she says quietly. The father lowers the lamp until only a fingernail of flame remains. In that tiny glow, the clay fire guardian on the hearth seems to watch over everything. Round, homely, older than any of them. He lifts one last thing, a small wooden cup still warm from the hearth. Inside is a spoonful of honey mixed with warm milk. He carries it to the bed, kneels, and lets each child take a single slow sip. A bedtime communion older than the church itself. Then the lamp is snuffed. The room sinks into darkness, broken only by the faint red eye of the banked fire and the softer glow of the warm stone somewhere under the blanket mountain. 4 small bodies shift, settle, and begin the slow, steady breathing that means the night has been tamed. From the blackness comes the eldest girl's sleepy voice, barely a thread. The foxes and the bear and the little cub are all safe in the den now, and the warm is bigger than the cold. Nothing answers but the soft rustle of straw and the quiet creak of the house rocking its children to sleep. You rise, careful not to let the rushes whisper too loudly, and slip toward the door. Outside, the wind is still prowling, sharp as ever, but inside that small cottage, a fox, a bear, a cub, and 2 tired parents have woven themselves into a single living hearth, and winter, for tonight at least, has lost the battle before it even began. You close the door without a sound, pull the little silk pouch of sugared violets to your lips once more, and walk on through the snow, carrying the newest and brightest warmth of all. The certain knowledge that children, with nothing but blankets, stories, stones, and each other, can make a summer fierce enough to laugh the coldest night to shame. Dawn is closer now. The longest winter night is almost over, and humanity, in all its sizes,
shapes and inventions, is still winning. You breathe in the sharp, green bite of the herbs and feel your head clear as though a window has opened inside your skull. The old woman sits opposite you, her shawl drawn close, yet her hands move with steady warmth over the small things on the table. A bowl of dried rose hips, a twist of cinnamon bark, a handful of tiny pine needles still fragrant with resin. Winter presses inward, she says, tapping her chest. Cold drives the blood to the heart and leaves the hands and feet forgotten.
The mind grows heavy like wet wool, so we coax the blood outward again and lighten the mind before it sinks. She lifts a small iron cup, pours hot water from a kettle that has been simmering at the edge of the hearth, and drops in a pinch of her mixture: sage, rosemary, ginger, a curl of cinnamon, 3 dried cloves. "Drink this an hour before sleep," she says, sliding the cup toward you. "It wakes the inner fire without waking the body too much. The blood remembers it is allowed to travel to the fingers and toes again." You sip. Heat blooms down your throat, spreads across your chest, then rolls outward in slow waves until even your ears tingle. She watches the effect with quiet satisfaction. Some winters, the cold settles in the lungs like an unwelcome guest. Then we burn a little pine resin and breathe the smoke, just enough to open the passages. Or we warm a cloth with hot salt and lay it on the chest so the breath learns to move freely again.
From a shelf, she takes a small linen bag filled with cherry stones that have been baked warm. "This goes between the shoulder blades," she says, pressing it gently against your back for a moment. "Cold knots the muscles here first. Warm stones loosen the knot so sleep can find you." She shows you others. A band of soft wool, soaked in warm wine and wrapped around the throat for those whose voices grow hoarse from icy air. A paste of mustard seed and honey, spread on the soles of the feet to draw the cold downward and out. A single spoonful of honey mixed with pepper and warmed milk taken at bedtime to keep the inner furnace stoked till dawn. "Much of what we do," she admits, "comes from watching grandmothers and guessing why it worked. Some of it is prayer dressed as plant. Some of it is plant dressed as prayer. In winter, the body does not care which is which, so long as the result is warmth and sleep." She rises, moves to a small box bed in the corner, her own, and pulls back the blanket. Beneath the wool lies a thin mattress stuffed with dried hops and lavender. "For restless nights," she says. The scent climbs into the brain and tells the thoughts to lie down. Finally, she lifts a tiny vial of dark oil, rosemary and clove in warm almond oil. She lets one drop fall onto your wrist and rubs it in with her thumb. The scent rises sharp and sweet. Within moments, you feel your pulse steady. "This," she whispers, "is what we use when the cold has gone too deep for blankets or stones. One drop on each wrist, one at the hollow of the throat, and the body remembers it is still alive." She closes the vial and presses it into your hand. "Take it. The road home is long, and the night is not finished with you yet." You thank her, the oil still tingling on your skin, the taste of spiced infusion lingering like a small hearth in your chest. When you step outside again, the cold is waiting, sharper, cleaner, more honest than before. But now your blood runs lighter, your breath comes easier, and the scent of rosemary and clove rides with you like an invisible cloak. Winter is still vast, but tonight, even the ancient healers have given you one more way to walk through it unharmed. Dawn is near now. You turn toward the pale seam on the horizon, carrying every warmth humanity has ever invented: stone, wool, story, spiced wine, shared breath, and the quiet green fire of herbs. And you are no longer merely enduring the night. You are answering it. She places in your palm a small, stoppered horn no longer than your thumb. Inside, dark oil glints with flecks of gold, clove, rosemary, and something resinous that smells of pine forests at midsummer. One drop on the tongue when the cold feels too heavy, she says, closing your fingers over it. It wakes the inner sun. Even when the night is blackest, the body remembers it is still a creature of light. She walks you to the door. The wind has quieted. Snow falls straight and slow, as though the sky itself is breathing out the last of its anger. Before you step over the threshold, she touches your wrist, just above the pulse. "Tell them all," she whispers, "the peasants, the monks, the lords, the children, the travelers. Tell them the healer says, winter is long, but the blood is stubborn. Keep it moving, keep it warm, keep it kind. That is all the medicine there has ever been." You tuck the tiny horn beside the warm stone, the sugared violets, the lavender rabbit, the fire pot coal, the silk pouch of clove and almond. Every warmth of the night now travels with you in one small pocket against your heart. Outside, the eastern sky has begun to loosen its grip on darkness. A thin line of pale rose appears where the hills meet the snow. The longest winter night is ending. You turn toward it, boots light on the fresh powder, breath rising like incense, every kind of warmth humanity ever invented beating in steady rhythm beneath your ribs. Winter came. Winter saw. Winter did not conquer.
You smile, press your mittened hand to the small treasury of gifts against your chest, and walk into the coming dawn, carrying proof that even the coldest night on earth cannot put out the fire people keep passing, hand to hand, heart to heart, age after age. You sit beside her in the near dark, close enough to feel the small, frightened heat coming off her shawl. Outside, the frost keeps drawing its silent lace across the shutter. Inside, the last ember in the hearth gives one tired pulse and sinks deeper into ash. She keeps her voice low, the way people speak in churches or graveyards. "Grandmother said the year has two kinds of nights," she whispers. "Summer nights are for forgetting. Winter nights are for remembering everything." She pulls the shawl tighter around her shoulders. When the fire burns high, dreams stay small and polite. When the fire dies, the room grows big and the dreams grow tall. They walk right out of the dark and sit on your chest until you wake. She glances at her sleeping family. "Mother speaks to people who died long ago. Father stands in the snow and listens to wolves that never open their mouths. My little brother cries about a black river that tries to carry him away. And me, I always hear footsteps behind me that stop when I turn." She shivers, not from cold. "Last winter, I dreamed of a woman made of snow standing at the foot of the bed. She didn't speak, only looked at me with eyes like frozen stars. When I woke, there was frost on the blanket, exactly where her feet had been." She is quiet a moment, then adds, almost shyly, "Sometimes the dreams are kind. Once I dreamed my dead grandfather came and laid his hand on my forehead.
It was so warm I slept the rest of the night without waking. In the morning, the others said I smiled the whole time. She turns to you, eyes wide in the ember glow. Do you think the dark really comes inside when the fire goes out? Or is it only that we finally have time to listen to what was always there?
Before you can answer, the father mutters again in his sleep, a low, troubled sound. The girl reaches across, and without waking him, rests her small hand on his arm. His brow smooths almost at once. She smiles a little sadly. Grandmother said winter dreams are like wolves at the door. If you greet them quietly and give them a place by the hearth, they lie down and sleep. If you bar the door and shout, they circle all night. She reaches under her shawl and pulls out a tiny knot of red wool thread tied around a single dried rowan berry. I keep this under my pillow, she whispers. Rowan keeps the night gentle. Most nights it works. A sudden gust rattles the shutter. Frost hisses softly against the wood like fingernails. The girl does not flinch this time. She only leans a little closer to you, the way her brother leans toward the warm stone. Outside, the long winter night is still hungry. Inside, a girl with Rowan and stories keeps watch over her sleeping family, holding the thin border between dream and dark with nothing but steady breath and the small, fierce courage of the very young.
You stay a little longer, sharing the silence, until her eyelids begin to droop, and the rowan berry slips from her fingers to rest against her heart. When you rise at last, she is already curling back into the nest of blankets, pulling the edge up over her ear like a fox going to earth. At the door you pause and look once more. 5 bodies breathe in slow unison. The frost on the shutter has drawn a perfect tree of ice across the wood, and somewhere inside the dark the winter dreams prowl, circle, sniff, and, finding the door guarded by a girl's quiet courage and a single red berry, finally lie down to wait for spring. You step out. The cold takes you again, but gently now, almost respectfully. You walk toward the horizon, where the first faint wash of rose is beginning to bleed upward through the snow-laden clouds, carrying one more warmth no one can see, the knowledge that even the longest, darkest, dreaming night cannot get past a child who refuses to be afraid of it. Winter is almost over.
The girl, the rowan, and the sleeping wolves have seen to that. You stand in the lane and let the village speak. First, the fence. A slow, deliberate groan as each plank shrinks a hair's breadth in the cold, pulling against the nails that hold it, singing its small winter song of resistance. Then the roof beams of the nearest cottage answer. Long, low creaks like old men turning over in bed. The thatch above them crackles faintly as ice needles form and shift. A shutter somewhere loosens in its frame and taps, once, twice, a hesitant knock no one will ever answer. From the well comes a sharp, crystalline ping. Water frozen in the bucket has swollen and split the iron hoop. The sound rings out clear and lonely, then dies into the snow. Over the fields, the ice on the river speaks loudest of all, a deep, resonant crack that rolls across the stillness like distant thunder, followed by a chorus of smaller pops as the surface adjusts to its new, thicker skin.
Even the snow itself has a voice tonight. When the wind moves high above, the top crust whispers, a dry, papery hush,
as millions of tiny ice feathers brush against one another. You close your eyes, and the whole village becomes a single, slow-breathing creature made of wood, iron, water, and frost. Every beam, every nail, every frozen blade of grass is singing the long, low note of winter contraction. A dog barks once far away, startled by a crack it cannot name, then thinks better of it and falls silent. An owl crosses the moon without a sound, the only living thing brave enough to move. You walk on, letting the cold orchestra play around you. Here a gate hinge gives a thin metallic sigh. There a bucket left outside the door answers with a dull, hollow thunk as the ice inside settles. The church bell, though no one rings it, gives one low, mournful note all on its own, the cold tightening the rope until the metal itself decides to speak.
And beneath everything, steady as a heartbeat, the soft creak, creak, creak of the great oak at the edge of the village as its sap freezes and its heartwood shrinks. You stop in the middle of the lane, surrounded by the quiet chorus of a world turning itself inside out with cold. Nothing is still. Everything is singing. Winter is not silent. It is only waiting for someone quiet enough, awake enough, cold enough to listen. Dawn is closer now, a pale seam of rose widening along the horizon. You stand among the hidden music of frost and wood and iron, pockets full of every warmth humanity has offered you tonight, and you understand the final, gentlest secret. Even the coldest night is alive, and it sings to anyone willing to walk slowly enough to hear. You smile into the thin, brightening air, pull the rosemary and apple pouch to your nose one last time, and start the last stretch toward morning, accompanied by the quiet, patient, unbreakable song of winter itself. She presses her finger gently to the wooden shutter, then pulls it open just a crack, no wider than a knife blade.
Cold air rushes in, sharp as vinegar, but she does not flinch. "Listen," she whispers. At first there is only silence, so complete it rings in your ears. Then it comes, a faint, almost musical pop. Then another, and another, scattered across the village roofs like the first hesitant notes of a distant harp. Tiny crystals of frost, formed in the night, are beginning to feel the first breath of dawn. They shrink, fracture, and sing. Pop, pop, pop. A soft, crystalline rain of sound, no louder than seeds falling on dry leaves. She smiles, eyes shining in the dimness. "That is winter saying good morning," she says. "When you hear the roofs applaud, you know the night has lost its grip." The old man nods beside her. "And when the applause stops," he adds quietly, "the sun is truly up and the world is allowed to move again." You stand between them at the open shutter, 3 breaths mingling in the cold, listening to the village wake one tiny crack at a time. Pop, 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 pop. 1,000 invisible glass bells ringing in the thatch.
Somewhere a rooster, fooled by the faint rose on the horizon, tries a rusty crow and thinks better of it. The frost keeps singing, and for the first time all night, the great wheel of winter feels, just slightly, as though it has begun to turn forward. You close your eyes and let the small, delicate applause of the morning wash over you. Every warmth you have gathered, stone, wool, herb, story, song,
spiced wine, shared breath, children's courage, healer's wisdom, the quiet music of frost itself rises together in your chest like a single, steady flame. The longest night is over. Winter has sung its coldest, darkest, most beautiful song, and humanity, in all its stubborn, inventive, listening glory, has answered back, note for note. You step away from the window. The old couple close the shutter with gentle care, as though tucking the night back into bed. Outside, the pale rose has become a clear, cold gold. Dawn has arrived. You turn your face to it, pockets full of summer scents and children's dreams, heart full of every secret the night was willing to tell, and you walk into the new day carrying the certain knowledge that no winter, however long, however fierce, has ever yet managed to silence the small, unbreakable music people and ice and dawn keep making together. The night is finished. The song goes on. You kneel in the half-dark, close enough to see the frost glittering on their eyelashes. The mother's voice is barely a thread, yet steady. "We are 5 hearts in one small nest," she whispers. "That is the last fire we have." The children, 2 small, 1 smaller, are pressed so tightly together they have become a single breathing creature. Their cheeks are flushed against the cold, but their eyes are bright with the strange, fierce joy of having survived the night so far. The father reaches out one trembling hand and touches your sleeve. "Feel," he says. You slip your fingers beneath the edge of the topmost blanket. Inside, the air is warmer than the room. Not warm, never warm, but alive. A pocket of stubborn heat clings to their bodies like moss to a stone. It is the heat of blood refusing to surrender, of lungs still pulling in the next breath, of arms and legs braided together so tightly that no cold can find a way between. The youngest child, no more than 3 winters, has burrowed so deep only a tangle of hair and one mittened hand show. That hand clutches a corner of his mother's shift with the desperate certainty of a climber holding the last rope. The eldest, a boy of 7 or 8, whispers through chattering teeth, "We played the game Mama taught us. We pretend we are 5 coals in a dead fire, and if we stay close enough, we can glow until morning." His mother manages the ghost of a smile. "We told stories without voices," she says, "just lips moving against each other's ears. Stories about summer, about bread baking, about the sun so hot we had to hide in the shade. The children swear they could smell the bread." The father adds, voice shaking with cold and pride in equal measure, "Every time one of us started to drift towards sleep and loosen an arm, another would pull tighter. We took turns being the outside. Whoever was coldest got moved to the middle. That is how we kept the smallest ones from freezing." You see it now, the careful rotation they must have performed all night long, shifting like slow gears, making sure no single body bore the full weight of the dark. The mother lifts the edge of the blanket a finger's breadth, just enough for you to glimpse the tangle of limbs and wool and desperate love beneath. "See," she breathes, "still warm, still ours." Outside, the first true hint of dawn touches the frosted window, a pale, cold gold.
The father hears it in the changing light and laughs once, a cracked, triumphant sound. "Listen," he says. From every cottage in the village now comes the soft scrape of shovels against hearths, the clatter of flint on steel, the sudden whoosh of new flame catching tinder.
Life is waking. He gathers his family closer, if such a thing is possible. "Hold fast, little coals," he whispers. "Morning is coming to borrow our fire and give it back 1,000 times brighter." You stay only long enough to see the first neighbor push open the door, lantern swinging, arms full of glowing embers in a clay pot, the village's ancient answer when one hearth fails. Light spills in. Heat follows. The children's eyes go wide as the new flame meets their small, defiant warmth and leaps into proper, roaring life. You step back into the lane. Behind you, 5 hearts that refused to go cold beat louder now, wrapped in wool, story, rotation, and the oldest magic of all, the promise that no one in this village will ever let another family face the dark alone. The sun lifts its edge above the horizon, small, fierce, and suddenly undeniably victorious. Winter has made its final, coldest point, and humanity, as always, has answered, "Not tonight. Not while we have each other."
You walk into the young day, carrying the last, brightest warmth of the entire long night, the certain knowledge that even when every fire dies, love still knows how to burn. You set the cloth-wrapped jar on the cold stones of the hearth. Even through the layers, you can feel the faint pulse of life inside. 3 or 4 coals no larger than hazelnuts, glowing like sleepy red eyes. The father's hands shake too much to strike flint. You take the striker from him, kneel, and blow the ashes apart until the gray dust reveals yesterday's last fragment of charred log. A breath, 2 breaths, careful, worshipful, and the coals from the jar tumble onto the waiting wood. For a terrible heartbeat, nothing happens. Then a thread of smoke rises, curls, thickens. A tongue of flame licks up, uncertain, then greedy. Another, and suddenly the hearth remembers its purpose. The fire catches with a soft roar that sounds in this frozen room like the loudest trumpet ever blown. The children's eyes go wide. The puppy lifts its head and gives one astonished bark. The mother's sob is half laugh, half prayer. She presses her face into her husband's shoulder while the warmth, real warmth, honest, growing warmth, begins to push the cold back toward the corners. The eldest girl scrambles from the blanket mountain, dragging the puppy with her, and holds her small hands to the new flame as though greeting an old friend who was feared dead. Within moments, the room changes color. Shadows retreat. Frost on the inside of the shutters begins to weep tiny tears. The father, tears on his own cheeks now, grips your forearm hard enough to bruise. "We thought dawn would come and find us stiff," he whispers. "Instead, it finds us alive." He reaches for the ember jar, cradles it like a newborn, and sets it carefully on the mantel. "This jar stays here until my youngest grandchild is old enough to be taught," he says. "Never again will this house forget." Outside, the first true ray of sun slips between the cottages and strikes the frosted window. The ice veins glitter once, bright, defiant, beautiful, then begin to run. You step back as neighbors crowd the doorway, faces you recognize from every cottage you visited tonight, carrying armfuls of burning kindling, pots of hot broth, extra blankets, their own triumphant smiles. No one speaks of heroism. This is simply what the village does when one hearth fails. Every other hearth answers. You slip out while the room fills with voices and steam and the smell of wood smoke and hope. The sun is fully up now, small,
fierce and utterly victorious. Winter has thrown its worst. It has lost. You walk away from the village, pockets full of every gift the night pressed into your hands: rosemary and apple peel, a carved wooden bird, a single clove, a drop of healing oil, the memory of 5 hearts that refuse to go cold. Behind you, smoke rises straight and strong from every chimney, as though the village itself is breathing a long, grateful sigh. Ahead, the snow glitters like scattered diamonds under a sky washed clean. The longest night is over, and humanity, with its embers, its stories, its stubborn, shared, astonishing love, has won again.
You smile, press your mittened hand to the small warmth against your heart, and start the long, bright walk home. Winter will come again, but never, not once, has it ever managed to keep the fire from catching. You stand in the lane and watch the village open its eyes. One by one, the doors creak, the shutters swing, the people step into the pale gold that has finally conquered the night. No one cheers. No one needs to. There is only the quiet, universal language of faces lifted to the low winter sun, the slow closing of eyes, the deep inhale, the small involuntary smile that says, without words, "We are still here. The night did not take us." A woman lifts a toddler to her hip. The child burrows into her neck, but his eyes stay fixed on the light, wide with the simple wonder of being allowed another morning. An old man leans on his stick and watches smoke rise straight and true from every chimney, as though the village itself is breathing a single, grateful sigh.
2 boys chase each other across the frozen yard, leaving dark footprints that steam faintly, proof that blood still runs, that legs still work, that childhood has survived intact. Even the animals join the silent celebration. A goat bleats once. A dog shakes frost from its coat and barks at the sun. The newborn calf staggers to its feet and noses its mother's warm flank as though greeting an old friend. You walk slowly through it all, past every doorway you entered in the dark, past every hearth you watched come back to life. No one asks your name. No one needs to. They know what you know now, that every winter night, no matter how long or how fierce, ends exactly like this, with ordinary people stepping into ordinary light, carrying nothing but the quiet, unbreakable certainty that they have once again refused to let the cold write the last line of their story. The sun climbs a little higher, still pale, still weak, but undeniably victorious. Somewhere, a woman begins to sing, a low, sleepy morning song about spring coming, about bread rising, about love that keeps its embers alive through even the darkest hours. One by one, other voices join.
You stand in the lane, pockets full of rosemary and apple peel, of carved birds and healing oils, of the memory of 5 hearts that became a single fire when every other fire failed, and you let the song wash over you. Winter is not finished. There will be other nights, other storms, other times when the darkness seems absolute, but this morning, at least, the village is warm, the sky is light, and humanity, small, stubborn, astonishing humanity, is walking out into the day wrapped in nothing more than wool and wonder and the oldest magic there has ever been, the refusal to surrender the fire. You smile, pull the little pouch of summer scent to your face one last time, breathe in rosemary and apple and every secret the night gave you, and start the long walk home under a sun that has never once, in all the winters of the world, failed to rise for the people who kept each other alive until it did. The longest night is over,
And love, as always, has won. You stand at the crest, and the village below exhales with you.
Every chimney lifts its thin, steady plume, small white prayers against the pale sky. Every window glows with the soft gold of rekindled hearths. Every breath you see drifting from doorway and stable and cloaked shoulder is proof that the longest night has lost its wager once again. The cold is still there, but it has been tamed. It no longer prowls, it only waits, patient now, knowing its turn will come again another year, another lifetime, another winter. But not today. Today belongs to the small, fierce, ordinary miracles, to the blacksmith's forge already roaring for any hand that needs warming, to the monk walking home with frost on his lashes and peace in his heart, to the travelers laughing as they swing into saddles warmed by last night's shared fire, to the mother stirring porridge while her children's cheeks turn pink again, to the farmer flexing stiff fingers and grinning at the simple fact that they still flex. You feel it all settle into you, not as memory, but as presence. The weight of the night lifts the way frost lifts from a window pane when the sun finally finds it. Slowly, quietly, completely. Your shoulders drop. Your breath lengthens.
The rosemary and apple scent in your pocket, the carved bird, the drop of clove oil, the sound of 5 hearts beating under dying blankets. They all soften into one quiet, steady warmth behind your ribs. You are no longer carrying the night. The night has become part of you, and you have made it gentle. Behind you, the village hums with the small, contented sounds of morning. A spoon against a bowl, a goat bleating for breakfast, a child's laugh, the soft creak of a door opening to let the new day in. Ahead, the fields glitter like a promise kept. You take one last slow breath of cold, clean, victorious air. Close your eyes for the length of a single heartbeat, and let the dawn finish what the night began. Then you turn and walk home under a sun that has never once failed to rise for the people who kept the fire alive until it did. Winter will come again, but for now, for this one bright morning, the world is warm, and you are part of the warmth. Sleep softly. The night is over. Morning has you.